Chapter 2053. A Grand exalts formations in the blink of an eye. Jian Chen's group had already stayed in the Neptunian mountains for a month. During this month, everything in the mountains was peaceful. It was like a pure land within the Neptunian divine palace, where all the bloodshed in there failed to reach the mountains. In an obscure cave covered with formations, Jian Chen, Chanlong, Kaya, and Xiaojing currently cultivated in seclusion as they ignored the outside world. After a month of cultivation, Jian Chen had already consumed over half of the God King level monster cores and the energy crystals from space beasts. He had already refined all the pure and violent energy in them, transforming it into surging chaotic force. Jian Chen's chaotic Niden had reached the peak of the 11th layer. He was just about to break through. It was also at this time that Jian Chen's statue-like body suddenly quivered. At that moment, his chaotic Niden had exploded loudly as terrifying chaotic force charged through his body rapidly like a loose, wild horse. At this moment, he finally broke through from the 11th layer and was consolidating the 12th. Jian Chen was already well versed with the breakthroughs of the chaotic body. He endured the intense agony that felt like a million ants gnawing at his bones as he devoted himself to condensing a new chaotic Niden. At the same time, Kaya sat in another region in the cave. The laws of creation, destruction, and fire formed 3 different lights as they enveloped her. Every single light fused with the surroundings, calling at the supreme laws of the world as they seemed to resonate. If other God Kings were present to see the power of laws around Kaya right now, they would definitely be extremely shocked, as the power of laws was extremely dense and pure. It was possible to tell from this alone that Kaya's grasp and usage of the laws had reached a level of mastery. If all the God Kings in the Saints' world only possessed a surface-level grasp over the laws of the world, then Kaya had truly grasped their essence. This was also why Kaya was basically invincible among her level of cultivation without any particular cultivation method or battle skill through her grasp over laws alone. Kaya's understanding and comprehension of laws basically increased evidently every single day during the month of seclusion. Moreover, it was not just a single law. The laws of creation, destruction, and fire advanced at the same time, where none of them fell behind. As Kaya's comprehension of the laws of the world constantly deepened, she suddenly had an extremely strange thought. She always felt like her soul was a fusion of the 3 laws because she felt a great sense of familiarity towards the 3 laws. However, there seemed to be an invisible, mysterious power that blocked her connection with the 3 laws. Whenever she comprehended the laws, the mysterious power would seem to weaken by a sliver, allowing her grasp over the laws to deepen and rapidly advance towards the level of God Kings. Both Jian Chen and Kaya benefited from the month of cultivation. However, Xiaojing, who cultivated as well, failed to benefit. Compared to Jian Chen and Kaya, Xiaojing's talent was rather ordinary. It had taken him close to 100,000 years to become an early God King, so a month of cultivation naturally had no effect on him. As for Master Chanlong, he had already looked through everything the Infinite Prime on the 7th floor had left behind on formations. Even though the information he left behind was tremendous, Chanlong was a prodigy in formations as well. Not only did Chanlong get through all of it in a short month, but he had even completely understood and grasped it as well. An early God King had used a short month to grasp all the secrets an Infinite Prime formations master had left behind. If this matter made it out, it would be enough to cause a great uproar. Although this Infinite Prime is a formations master and his mastery over formations had reached an extremely profound level, his understanding of formations remains at a surface level in my eyes. Aside from the various tools required and personal cultivation, you also need to secretly use the power of the laws of formations in order to cast a truly powerful formation that's difficult to destroy. Moreover, from my deductions, I believe that there's completely no need to use the power of your cultivation or any formation banners to cast down formations at a high level. Only the power of the laws of formations is needed, and they can be created one after another with a single thought. Not only is a formation like that completely natural, but it also secretly contains the might of the world, making it truly perfect. There are no crucial points or weak points at all. It's just that my comprehension of the way of formations still hasn't reached that level, so I can't cast perfect formations. Master Chanlong thought to himself. He viciously picked out many areas that dissatisfied him from the legacy the infinite prime formations master left behind. At this moment, Master Chanlong's eyes lit up. He looked at the Neptunian mountains as he thought. According to Xiao Zheng, the formations at the core of these mountains were personally cast down by a Grand Exalt. A Grand Exalt's mastery over the ways of formations is definitely far greater than mine. I wonder if I can observe these formations. If I can just comprehend a sliver of it, it'll be a huge fortune for me. Master Chanlong did exactly what he thought. Immediately, he expanded the senses of his soul, sending it all into the Neptunian mountains. It was unexpectedly successful. The senses of his soul that were not particularly powerful actually penetrated the Neptunian mountains easily. Master Chanlong could clearly sense an outline within the rocks of the Neptunia mountains that concealed the inscriptions of a tremendous formation. The inscriptions were extremely packed, stretching out like a spider's web. Every single part of it contained the supreme mysteries of the world. It truly is worthy of being a formation personally cast down by a Grand Exalt. The way of formations here is like the boundless universe. Master Chanlong was immediately alarmed as he felt secretly amazed. Without any hesitation, he continued to penetrate the place with the senses of his soul. It was quite strange. Even though there was a formation so terrifying that it was basically heaven-defying in the Neptunian mountains, the holy mountains of the Taoist sect of Neptunia, the senses of Master Chanlong's soul was like a fish in water. It reached the true core region of the Neptunian mountains effortlessly, without experiencing any obstructions along the way at all. Countless inscriptions formed a ball of light in the true core region of the Neptunian mountains. It was only the size of a head, giving off a mysterious presence. The ball of light seemed like a miniature universe. The ball of light flickered, constantly invoking the laws of the world and affecting the region where the Neptunian mountains stood, creating its own order. Master Chanlong felt lost when he saw the ball of light. Through it, he seemed to see another world, a world that only belonged to the way of formations. Aside from that, he could feel a strange sense of familiarity from the ball of light. It was an indescribable feeling of nostalgia. That's strange. Why do I feel a sense of familiarity? I feel like I know this formation, but I clearly haven't seen it before. I've never come across such a great formation in my entire life. Master Chanlong was stumped. However, at this moment, Master Chanlong's sense of the soul suddenly lost control and rapidly approached the ball of light. It was as if the ball of light suddenly emitted a terrifying suction, drawing in Master Chanlong's senses of the soul. Even when he resisted with his full strength, it was useless. Master Chanlong's face suddenly changed. Immediately, he wanted to sever this portion of his senses, but as soon as he considered it and before he could actually do it, the suction from the ball of light had already established a connection with the senses of the soul. It locked onto Master Chanlong's soul, and in the end, under his terrified gaze, his soul left his body and was sucked up by the ball of light. This had all happened just too quickly. Master Chanlong could not even think much of it, and his soul had already arrived inside the ball of light. However, to Master Chanlong's surprise, not only did the ball of light pose no threat to his soul, but he even felt a warm presence instead. It calmed down the unease he felt and allowed him to settle down gradually. Master Chanlong did not observe the core of the formation. All his attention was concentrated ahead right now. A thumb-sized speck of light hovered there, shining with rainbow colors. It was enchanting. The rainbow light seemed to form an obscure connection with Chanlong's soul, causing him to lock onto the speck of light through this vague connection as soon as he entered the core of the formation. His soul actually lost control and began to approach the speck of light. This was not a result of Master Chanlong being careless. Instead, it was completely instinctual, originating from the depths of his soul. In the end, Master Chanlong's soul fused with the rainbow light, and his soul suddenly quivered. At that moment, he felt like thunder had exploded in his head, completely stunning him on the spot. An extremely blurry image appeared in his head. The background of this image was the vast outer space. Two figures surrounded by the light of laws stood there. They both gave off terrifying, boundless presences, causing the entire universe to tremble. All the stars lost their color, seemingly submitting themselves to the two people. Even the supreme laws of the universe were affected, falling into abnormal disarray. The two figures were so powerful that they were enough to make people shiver in infinite fear. They stood at the apex of the universe and were existences just like the laws of the world. They were paramount and controlled the laws of the world, where they could interfere with the process of the universe with a single thought, setting down their own order. They basked in the light of laws, which obscured their presences. A disk of laws revolved above the head of one of them, completely filling up outer space and invoking the mysteries of the world. With a single thought, it could turn into a supreme formation that could destroy the universe, annihilate space, and change the trajectories of the laws of the world. The other person had 6 images of samsara behind him. Each image was boundless such that they seemed to form 6 major worlds, and each world possessed a different kind of samsaric power. With the 6 images together, they gave off terrifying, boundless might like a supreme god that could suppress the laws of an entire world. The image suddenly halted before shattering in the next moment. Even though it had only appeared for a split second, Qianlong felt like he had completely submerged into it. The influence on him was so great that he struggled to calm down even after a long time. Grand exalts. The two figures were definitely grand exalts. One of them must have been the senior who cast down the formation in the Neptunian mountains, while the other grand exalt must have been the samsaric immortal exalt of the immortals world. Master Qianlong's soul shook violently as he was extremely shocked. What is this rainbow light? Master Qianlong directed his attention to the speck of rainbow light. Now that the speck had fused into his soul, he knew nothing about it apart from the fact that it did not threaten him at all. However, his soul was unable to peer into the light and see its secrets. The rainbow light obstructed it. Suddenly, Master Qianlong's soul shuddered once again. He felt great surprise and joy. He discovered that his soul was actually able to fuse into the core of the formation and seemingly become one with it. He could clearly observe the entire formation through the core. In the next moment, the tremendous formation within the Neptunian mountains cast down by a grand exalt no longer hid any secrets from Qianlong. He was able to inspect all of its details as he wished. He even began to feel like he could control the power of the formation as well as the entire Neptunian mountains. It was to the point where he possessed supreme control over every inch of the land. Are the Neptunian mountains a mountain or a treasure? Qianlong was stunned. However, he soon gazed into the distance. Through the Neptunian mountains, he discovered 3 familiar figures fly into the Neptunian mountains. It's the people with the 5th prince. Qianlong immediately recognized them. The 3 of them were the 2 siblings and Heya. They had come under the 5th prince's orders to claim Jian Chen's life. Heya was a tall, skinny young man. He seemed ordinary without any special features. However, his cultivation was powerful, having reached late God King. By he, that kid called Jian Chen should be in the vicinity of the Neptunian mountains. I can sense that we're getting closer and closer. We should be almost there. Heya could not help but slow down as he began to conceal his presence. He silently made his way directly towards where Jian Chen's group had entered seclusion. He looked backwards and said to the sibling quietly, "Be ready for battle. We have to complete the 5th prince's mission. We can't let anything go wrong. Although Jian Chen and the others aren't powerful, and we can easily kill them with our strength, they still have 2 supreme overgods after all. Who knows if they're hiding some life-saving trump card? If they escape, we won't be able to explain it to the 5th prince. Don't worry. With the 2 of us taking part, they definitely can't escape. Even if they have life-saving measures, they won't be able to use them in time unless they're also late god kings," Bai Qi sniggered. Although the 2 siblings and Heyo were still extremely far away from where Jian Chen's group cultivated, Qianlong had already fused with the Neptunian mountains. He could observe everything happening in the surroundings with a single thought. Nothing would be able to escape his senses. It felt like the entire region where the Neptunian mountains sat on had become Qianlong's domain, while Qianlong himself had become the supreme ruler of this domain. As a result, Qianlong completely heard the exchange between the three people. The three of them have come to kill us. They have ill intentions, thought Master Qianlong. With a thought, his soul had already returned to his body. However, the speck of rainbow light in the core of the formation seemed to have wormed into his soul, following his soul back to his body. Right now, Master Qianlong had no need to fuse his soul into the core of the formation. He could vaguely feel a connection with the Neptunian mountains, allowing him to control the formations in there at any time. He closely sensed the power he grasped right now, and Master Qianlong could not help but become confident. He murmured, "I'd be forced into defense if it were me from before, but now..." With a flash, Qianlong left the cave and sat down on a branch of a large tree outside. He leisurely waited for Bai Qi, Bai He, and Heiya's arrival. When Heiya entered the depths of the Neptunian mountains, he moved slower and slower. A mysterious power that permeated the world there affected him to a certain degree, such that his senses of Jian Chen's group became hazy. His innate ability was extremely affected. It truly is worthy of being a formation personally cast down by the Grand Exalt of ancient paths for it to affect my innate abilities so drastically. I can actually only sense 3 of the 4 people. I can't find the other person at all. Heiya was amazed. He moved slower and slower, as he was afraid that he would suddenly lose track of them. After almost half a day, Heiya stopped at a place with the 2 siblings. The 3 of them concealed their presences as they moved about silently, without alarming anyone. "It's right here. There's an obscure cave below. It's covered up by a formation. Jian Chen and the others are in there," said Heiya as he pointed at an inconspicuous stone wall. Then, he frowned slightly as he looked at Bai He and Bai Qi. He said with a strange expression, "However, my innate talent can only sense 3 of them. The 4th person completely vanished earlier. I still can't find him even now." "Completely vanished?" Bai He raised an eyebrow as she giggled. "It's certain that the 4 of them are in the Neptunian mountains. Surely the person who has completely vanished hasn't died after an accident happened during cultivation, right? That's impossible. Even if he's dead, I can still find his corpse with my innate talent, and even if the corpse is destroyed, I can sense where he died," Heiya said firmly. "Whatever. If we can't find him, then let it be. Let's kill the other 3 quickly, and then reunite with the 5th prince." Bai Qi took a step forwards as he stared at the cave with much interest. Heavy killing intent flickered through his eyes. "The defense of this formation is impressive, but we have to smash through it in a single strike to stop the people inside from escaping. Sister, let's use our combined attack. Heiya, keep watch outside." As they said that, the siblings had already begun to store up power to unleash a powerful strike. "The 3 of you, we have no grievances with you, so may I ask why you want to kill us?" Just as the siblings were about to unleash their combined attack, an old voice suddenly rang out from nearby. The sudden voice stunned Bai Qi, Bai He, and Heiya. They immediately looked towards the origins of the voice and saw Qianlong seated leisurely on the tree with a single glance. Their eyes immediately narrowed as they stared at Qianlong. They were astounded. This was because the tree where Qianlong sat on was close to the cave. He did not try to conceal anything at all, yet the 3 of them had completely failed to sense his presence. Even when they scanned the region with the senses of their soul, they still found nothing on the tree. Impossible. How is this possible?" Heiya stared at Qianlong in shock as he stammered heavily. His heart churned. To no surprise, the person he was unable to sense with his innate ability was Qianlong. However, now that Qianlong was right in front of him, he was still unable to lock onto Qianlong with his innate ability. Qianlong seemed like he had completely fused with the surroundings, truly becoming a part of the world there. He could only be discovered through sight. "Who are you?" Bai Qi growled as he became rather grim. "It doesn't matter who he is. He's just an early god king. He probably has some treasure or has grasped some special secret technique, which is why he's able to avoid our senses," Bai He said gruffly with a sense of wildness. She opened her hand, and a red orchid hovered in her hand, drifting towards Qianlong. The orchid expanded in the air, instantly becoming several dozen meters across. Each petal was extremely large, shining with a demonic red light. It engulfed Master Chanlong from above, where the petals wrapped around him in an attempt to envelop him completely. The orchid was originally just a seed. It had fallen from outer space, landing right before Bai He incidentally. Bai He knew that the seed was extraordinary, as it possessed an extremely powerful life force, so she raised it. The seed germinated into a beautiful orchid before gradually developing consciousness. In the end, it grew until its current state from devouring the flesh and blood of cultivators, making it extremely powerful. Once bound by the orchid, even late god kings would not necessarily be able to escape. Across the years, countless god kings had died to the orchid. When the orchid dealt with Chanlong, Bai Qi, Bai He, and Heya all paid close attention. Chanlong was weak, only an early god king, but he was just too abnormal at that moment. He was actually able to evade their senses and render Heya's innate talent useless. Bang! At this moment, the orchid that had engulfed Chanlong suddenly exploded without any prior signs. The orchid was instantly reduced to pieces. The expressions of Bai Qi, Bai He, and Heya all changed drastically as they became filled with shock. The three of them had always been paying close attention, but they failed to detect anything abnormal at all. What just happened? Heya said with a trembling voice. He completely understood the strength of the orchid. It had easily devoured many late god kings, yet it had just exploded for no apparent reason before him. Bai Qi and Bai He were confused as well, having no idea what power had slain the orchid. Only Bai He's face became rather pale. Her face was filled with pain when she saw the orchid die. Master Chanlong sat on the tree without moving at all as his eyes shone. He was delighted as he struggled to hide his joy. "Why have you come?" At this moment, a deep voice rang out. Jian Chen passed through the formation and emerged from the cave where he cultivated in seclusion. He glanced at the orchid that had exploded in the air before glaring at Bai Qi, Bai He, and Heya. Right now, an extremely powerful presence revolved around Jian Chen. He was filled with an explosive power, clearly having reached the 12th layer of the chaotic body successfully. "The three of them have especially come to kill us," Master Chanlong said calmly. Jian Chen snorted coldly when he heard that. His gaze towards Bai Qi, Bai He, and Heya was as sharp as a sword as he said coldly, "May I ask the three of you how we have offended the fifth prince, where he has sent you to kill us?" The siblings and Heya did not reply. They all stared at Chanlong with shock, confusion, and some fear. "How did you deal with my heavenly sacred flower? Why did my heavenly sacred flower explode for no reason?" Bai He asked Chanlong firmly as she felt both surprised and furious. "This is a power that you won't be able to understand or believe in. It's best if you don't know, or your minds probably won't be able to accept it," Master Chanlong said calmly and leisurely. However, in truth, his heart had already begun churning after he killed the orchid, where he was unable to calm down. You're just trying to seem mysterious." Bai Qi snorted coldly as killing intent flickered through his eyes. A huge mace appeared in his hand, and he directly smashed it towards Master Chanlong from over 1,000 meters away. The mace became extremely huge the moment it fell, where the handle was several hundred meters long, reaching towards Master Chanlong. The head of the mace had become over 100 meters wide now as energy surged with it. It truly did seem destructive. Master Chanlong's expression remained the same. He was connected to the formations of the Neptunian mountains, so the entire region seemed to become his domain. As for him, he had become the god of this domain, where he could control the lives and deaths of everything in the area. With this geographical advantage, Chanlong was extremely confident. He felt like even if primordial realm experts had come, they would not be able to injure him at all. This was all because of the supreme formation in the Neptunian mountains. Just when Master Chanlong wanted to move and stop Bai Qi's mace with the formation, Jian Chen charged into the sky instead. His hair and clothes fluttered as he gave off a surging presence. He directly struck out with his hand at the falling mace. The powers of the laws of the sword shone with resplendent white light on his hand while chaotic force permeated the inner layer as it gave off a presence of destruction. You want to block my strike with your bare hands? What do you think you're doing? Bai Qi could not help but scoff slightly when he saw Jian Chen's actions. He understood the power of his strike extremely well. Let alone Jian Chen, someone who had just become a god king, even a few regular late god kings would not dare to take it on directly. Boom! In the next moment, the collision happened, producing a violent sound. Terrifying energy burst out in the sky like fireworks as they spread out in all directions. Such a powerful storm of energy was enough to destroy an entire city in the outside world, but in a place like the Neptunian Mountains, it failed to harm anything around. Bai Qi's sneer froze up at that moment, and his face changed rapidly. It was quite a spectacular sight. His eyes became filled with disbelief. When Jian Chen's hand struck the mace, Bai Qi only felt a terrifying force pass through his weapon, causing his body to tremble uncontrollably before he was forced to step backwards. His sleeves around the hands that he used to hold the mace turned to dust instantly while the webbing between his thumb and index ripped open. No, impossible. You've clearly just become a god king, so how can you be so powerful? Bai Qi cried out as he stared at Jian Chen like he was looking at a monster. On the other side, the eyes of Bai He and Heya, who did not take Jian Chen seriously originally, narrowed at that moment. They all stared at Jian Chen as disbelief also filled their faces. There were many late god kings around the fifth prince, but out of all of them, Bai Qi was a great expert only second to Mr. Shu. Despite this being the case, he had actually been forced back by an early god king just now. This had completely destroyed their preconceived ideas. If I wasn't this powerful, I'd be a corpse below your feet already, Jian Chen said emotionlessly. As soon as he emerged from seclusion, he met the three of them who had come to kill him. It made him extremely furious as he experienced heavy killing intent. Bai Qi's battle prowess was very great. Although it was not as great as those supreme god kings from the rumors, he was still far more powerful than regular late god kings. If Jian Chen had not broken through, he would truly be in life-threatening danger when he faced the three of them. Jian Chen lunged forwards and crossed over 1,000 meters, appearing before the shocked Bai Qi like he had teleported. He shot out a strand of Daluo sword qi just by raising his hand and began to engage in an intense battle against Bai Qi. Jian Chen's strength was so great now that it was truly indescribable and unfathomable. When he fought against Bai Qi bare-handed, every single move and strike from him contained terrifying energy that was as tremendous as the seas. He firmly suppressed Bai Qi, who had a supreme quality saint artifact. Arg! Bai Qi roared out, and his presence erupted. He struck out with his full strength, using various powerful truth-tier battle skills in the battle against Jian Chen. There would be powerful storms of energy every time they clashed, spreading out through the surroundings in a vigorous manner. Although they were unable to damage anything on the Neptunian Mountains, they had already alerted all the people cultivating there long ago. In the distance, several dozen god kings had already gathered silently. All of them stood in the air as they observed the battle from very far away. That late god king should be from a major organization. His origin energy is thick and pure, so his cultivation method must be extraordinary. At the same time, the battle skills he possesses are also some of the best. They are all at the 9th grade of the truth tier. His current strength is only slightly worse than those deviants who have made it onto the God King's throne. The truly amazing part is his opponent. He seems to have only reached God King recently, yet he possesses such terrifying and astounding battle prowess. It really is unbelievable. It really is hard to imagine just how powerful he was when he was an overgod now that he can fight late God Kings after having just become a God King himself. The God Kings in the surroundings all sighed in amazement as they looked at Jian Chen fearfully. This person will definitely become a supreme God King on the God King's throne once he becomes a late God King, and he'll definitely be able to make it into the top 100. He might even surpass me and reach the top 10, said a God King in black robes. He was surrounded by a group of people. Clearly, his status was very great. He was commenting on Jian Chen. The God King seemed to be in his early 30s. He had concealed his presence. He seemed just like an ordinary person, but he also seemed to possess a vague bearing of a supreme lord. He was like a future king, a formidable ruler of the world that was still growing. Young master is correct. This person is indeed very extraordinary, and his future is limitless. Of course, that's given that he can mature successfully. After all, many powerful deviants have appeared throughout the history of the saints' world, but most of them pass away before they can fully mature. At the same time, there aren't a lot of people who make it to the very apex, a ruddy old man said from behind the black-robed God King. The deafening sounds constantly rang out like thunder in the sky. It boomed through the entire place, echoing in the mountains. Jian Chen and Bai Qi's battle had not lasted for long, but they fought extremely intensely. Bai Qi was immediately forced into a retreat when he faced Jian Chen's barrage of attacks, showing signs of defeat. He was already quite injured as slashes covered his body, soaking him in blood. His sister, Bai He, and He Ya stood to one side as they watched on. They were completely astounded. Clearly, they struggled to accept this. The three of them had come together to kill off Jian Chen's group under the Fifth Prince's orders. Originally, they did not treat their targets with any particular attention at all. In their eyes, killing Jian Chen's group was a piece of cake and would be completely effortless. They even wanted to use some more powerful attacks to kill them in a single strike so that they could prevent them from escaping through some mysterious method. However, the sight before them right now seemed completely dramatized. Let alone killing them in a single strike, even victory alone was uncertain. "Brother, let me help you," Bai He called out, and she rushed into the battle with a thin sword. She fought against Jian Chen with Bai He. The siblings were out to kill. They struck out mercilessly, all in an attempt to kill Jian Chen. They seemed like they would not stop until Jian Chen was dead. Jian Chen was not afraid. His chaotic body had already reached the 12th layer, so his body had experienced a qualitative leap. It had basically evolved, becoming extremely tough. His hand shot into the air as a blur coated in chaotic force, striking Bai He's sword with unimaginable great strength. Bai He's sword produced a deep resonance as it trembled from Jian Chen's powerful strike. A powerful force moved through the sword and struck Bai He, immediately causing her expression to change. She let out a grunt as the bones in her right hand that held the sword seemed to crack. At the same time, Bai Qi bellowed out. He condensed powerful energy around his mace, causing it to shine brightly as he swung it with a powerful battle skill. Jian Chen remained extremely composed when he faced the attacks of the siblings together. He used a strand of Daluo sword qi to block Bai Qi's battle skill as he stabbed out with his other hand. With a resplendent white glow, the hand headed towards Bai Qi's chest. Spurt! Jian Chen's hazy hand was unstoppable. It directly pierced through Bai Qi's armor and emerged from his back. Blood spurted into the sky from Bai Qi's mouth. He retreated with lightning speed, instantly appearing 1,000 meters away. His gaze was filled with shock. He actually felt extremely confused. When he saw Jian Chen in the divine medicinal garden before, Jian Chen did not seem very powerful at all, yet he was so strong now. What is this power? Bai Qi was astounded inside. He obviously knew that Jian Chen's battle prowess came from the destructive power under his control and a body that was comparable to high-quality saint artifacts. There was also his sword techniques. "Brother, let's kill him with our combined attack." Bai He and Bai Qi reunited with each other. Bai He called out, and the two of them immediately used a secret technique. A blinding light surrounded them as they combined their strength to produce their most powerful attack. Immediately, energy pulses appeared in the sky. A huge pillar of energy, possessing both the power of their cultivation and laws, swung towards Jian Chen with lightning speed. Facing the combined attack, Jian Chen felt like his presence had been locked onto, and he could not dodge. However, he did not feel fear because of that. With a single thought, he used the Tai sword technique, turning into a sword with his tough, chaotic body. Boom! Jian Chen destroyed the siblings' combined attack in a single strike. Jian Chen continued onwards without slowing down at all, turning into a huge sword as he was surrounded with light. He shone like the sun, piercing through where the siblings stood like a hot knife through butter. The light around the siblings vanished and revealed them again. Right now, both of them were stunned, and their eyes were hollow. Then they fell out of the sky. A tiny slash, almost invisible to the naked eye, had appeared on their foreheads. It had destroyed their souls. Even though the siblings could not defeat Jianchen, he was not necessarily able to stop them if they wanted to flee. However, the two of them had never considered running. They wholeheartedly wanted to kill off Jianchen's group. After which, they would return to the fifth prince to report their success. As a result, they died on the spot. Jianchen removed their space rings and stowed them away without even looking at them. He was also covered in blood. However, it did not belong to him but the siblings. Arg! At this moment, a miserable cry rang out in the distance. Heya wanted to flee when he saw how the situation was against him, but he ended up running into an invisible barrier. His head was bleeding now. Jianchen looked at Heya, and he showed some doubt. In the next moment, he appeared before Heya and asked emotionlessly, "Why does the fifth prince want us dead?" "It's because of Yun Exen." Seeing how it was impossible to escape anymore, Heya reported everything he knew obediently while his face was covered with blood. A cold light flickered through Jianchen's eyes after he learnt about the background behind this matter. He revealed heavy killing intent. He had never thought that the fifth prince wanted to kill him over the simple fact that Yun Exen missed him a little. "I've already killed Bai Qi and Bai He, so my grievance with the fifth prince has basically been set in stone." Jianchen's gaze at Heya immediately became icy when he thought up to there. Sensing Jianchen's killing intent, Heya shivered from the bottom of his heart. He said, "Don't kill me, don't kill me. I swear that if you keep me alive, I'll be useful to you." Chanlong also made his way over and appeared before Jianchen. He studied Heya and said to Jianchen, "Jianchen, this person really does have a unique ability. Keeping him alive might be useful." A cold light flickered through Jianchen's eyes as he stared at Heya. "Tell me how you can be useful, and give me a reason why I shouldn't kill you." Heya's despaired eyes immediately lit up. As if he had somehow found a sliver of hope of surviving, he explained in a hurry, "I have an innate ability where I can clearly sense the location of anyone I've seen as long as their cultivation doesn't surpass mine by too much, regardless of how well they're hidden or if they've changed their appearance and presence. As a result, I can find them." Heya looked at Jianchen uneasily. He hesitated slightly before continuing, "We were able to find your location with such accuracy this time because I saw the four of you earlier, so you can't escape from me no matter how well hidden you are." Jianchen's eyes lit up from that. Heya's ability was indeed extraordinary. It would be of great use under certain critical situations. "I'll give you a chance then. Swear your loyalty to me, and I can spare you. Otherwise, you need to know that I will never leave someone like you alive, especially around the fifth prince who's targeting me," said Jianchen. Heya was immediately rendered speechless with that. Then he became troubled. Submitting himself to Jianchen was equivalent to betraying the fifth prince. "Are you unwilling to agree?" Jianchen said in a deep voice. Heyu hesitated. After a while, when he thought about how Jianchen could easily kill Bai Qi and Bai He when they worked together right after he became a god king, Heyu seemed to make up his mind. He said through gritted teeth, "It's not impossible for me to submit, but you must guarantee that the fifth prince's entire group won't leave the Neptunian divine palace. Otherwise, if the fifth prince learns that I've betrayed him, my clan will be devastated. If you can't do that, then I'd rather die to your hand than destroy my clan." Heya had no attachments to the fifth prince, as he was not actually willing to become a guard of the fifth prince. Instead, the fifth prince threatened him with his clan and forced him to join, so he had always resented the fifth prince slightly. "All right, I agree," Jianchen replied without hesitation. Heya's innate ability delighted him. It would be of great use sooner or later. Moreover, he had already fallen out with the fifth prince after killing the two siblings. The fifth prince would never just let the matter be, so there would be a battle between them sooner or later. Afterwards, Heya immediately swore a blood oath, offering his loyalty to Jianchen. However, he did reiterate that as long as the fifth prince was still alive, he would not be on Jianchen's side. I need to leave first and find a place to hide. I can't let the fifth prince know that I've betrayed him, or once he leaves here alive, my clan will be done for, Heya said grimly. You can stay in the Neptunian mountains. It's very safe here. No one can threaten you. If the fifth prince comes here, even if he has the protection of experts from the God King's thorn, it's certain death, said Master Chanlong. Heya looked at Master Chanlong and could not help but think about Baihe's orchid exploding for no reason. He asked fearfully, Did you secretly pull some strings when I tried to run away earlier? Master Chanlong nodded. All right, I'll stay in the Neptunian mountains for now then. Heya agreed in an extremely straightforward manner. Afterwards, Heya found a nearby cave to dwell in. Jianchen looked at Chanlong, on the other hand, and asked, It looks like you've had a fortuitous encounter. You've even surprised me when you killed that orchid, and I had no inkling at all when you stopped Heya. Chanlong exhaled deeply. I did indeed experience a fortuitous encounter. Jianchen, if I say I can effortlessly kill primordial realm experts here, would you believe me? Jianchen's eyes shone brightly as he stared at Chanlong. He was extremely stern as he studied Chanlong carefully. After quite a long while, he said, I believe you. But just how did you get such great strength all of a sudden? I can control the Grand Exalt's formations in the Neptunian mountains. The entire region of the Neptunian mountains is my domain. Chanlong hid nothing from Jianchen and told him the truth. Jianchen's eyes narrowed in shock as he struggled to remain calm. After a long time, he let out a deep exhale and slowly calmed down. He stared at the severed pieces of the orchid. He now knew that it had been slain by the Grand Exalt's formations under Chanlong's control. Suddenly, Jianchen's eyes narrowed. With a flash, he appeared among the broken pieces and discovered a thumb-sized seed within a piece of broken root. It shone with a hazy light. A powerful vitality was hidden in there. It was very extraordinary. Master, this is an immortal devouring orchid. At this moment, the sword spirit's voices rang out in Jianchen's head once again. It had been quite a long time since they last communicated with him. Immortal devouring orchids come from the immortal's world and only grow in the immortal's world. This orchid can cultivate through devouring all life forms, allowing it to grow at astonishing speeds. It's a very special organism, and even in the immortal's world, it's rare. Many large sects and organizations would especially nurture an immortal devouring orchid as a guardian spirit for their organization, said the sword spirits. Although the saint's world and the immortal's world stand on different sides, some people still cross the worlds. This immortal devouring orchid came from the immortal's world. There's no doubt about it. It's just that in the saint's world, many people don't recognize the immortal devouring orchid, nor do they know of its true value. Otherwise, it would never just be overlooked like this. But the immortal devouring orchid is already dead now. There's only a seed left, Jianchen sighed as he shook his head. Master, immortal devouring orchids are grown from seeds like these. The seed in your hand is equivalent to the descendant of the immortal devouring orchid that just died. You need to drop your blood onto the seed so that it gains your presence. This way, once the seed germinates, it will treat you as its only owner. Moreover, Master's blood is chaotic blood, so the immortal devouring orchid will evolve with your blood. The orchid is a special organism. It grows extremely quickly. I believe it'll be of great help to Master very soon. Qing Sua's crisp and gentle voice rang out in Jianchen's head, urging him to make the orchid his own by dripping blood on it. Jianchen did not drip his blood on the seed immediately. Instead, he asked Chanlong for the seed while holding it. After all, the immortal devouring orchid was slain by Chanlong, so it was his spoils of the battle logically. Since you're interested in this seed, just take it, Chanlong did not mind. In reality, he and Jianchen had gone through thick and thin during the journey from the Cloud Plain. They had gone through countless battles of life and death together and had truly traversed mountains of corpses and seas of blood together. They had already formed a deep friendship. Jianchen no longer hesitated, and he dripped a droplet of his chaotic blood onto the seed. The blood fused into it silently. After absorbing the chaotic blood, the pulse of life in the seed became visibly more vigorous. At the same time, it shone brighter. This seed really has evolved. The evolution will probably last for quite a few days. Jianchen could not help but become secretly eager as he sensed the internal changes with the seed. He knew that the sword spirits were not liars. Since the seed would turn into great help very soon, it really was a joyous surprise for him. Jianchen, what happened here? At this moment, Kaya emerged from the cave and stared at Bai Qi and Bai He's corpses as well as the blood on Jianchen. She frowned. Kaya, you've also become a god king. Jianchen stared at Kaya and immediately became excited. He told her about everything that had happened earlier. Kaya's eyes turned cold after learning about everything. She said frigidly, "This fifth prince truly is ignorant. Does he think he can do whatever he wishes with that tiny amount of power he has?" Jianchen's face froze. He stared at Kaya blankly as he asked in concern, "Kaya, are you fine?" For some reason, the Kaya at that moment seemed slightly unfamiliar to Jianchen. Her frigid voice seemed to possess a hint of condescension as if she looked down on everyone in the world. There were almost 50 people around the fifth prince, including the god artifact-wielding Mr. Shu. This was quite a powerful force, yet it had been described as a tiny power in Kaya's words. Kaya was not like this according to Jianchen's understanding. Even if she was powerful enough to completely overwhelm the fifth prince's people, she would not say something like that. Chanlong stared at Kaya in surprise and doubt as well. Although he had met Kaya recently, he knew what kind of person she was and what personality she had. Chanlong also felt that what Kaya had just said seemed somewhat foreign. However, this unfamiliarity also seemed to be extremely familiar, as if it was supposed to be. It made Chanlong feel conflicted inside. Chapter 2059, Cleaning Out the Divine Medicinal Garden, 1. I'm fine, Kaya said calmly as if she did not realize just how out of character what she just said was. Jianchen did not continue the conversation. He looked at Kaya with surprise and doubt. An increase in strength can indeed make people more confident. And with Kaya's battle prowess when she was still an overgod, her current strength should be no weaker than mine after becoming a god king. Has her mental state changed because her status is increasing due to her increase in strength? Jianchen thought. He could not help but worry for Kaya. He did not know what had happened to Kaya, nor did he know whether it was good or bad. If this continued, would Kaya become even colder and even more emotionless when she broke through to the primordial realm? According to his knowledge, many supreme experts would become emotionless in both the saints' world and the immortals' world, viewing all life forms as ants. Kaya, aren't you progressing too quickly? If this continues, your mental state won't be able to adjust. You should slow down in the future and focus on your mind, Jianchen said sincerely and sternly. Yep, Kaya's heart warmed up when she saw Jianchen's care, and she answered gently. Her face became gentle once again, no longer cold and serious like before. What should we do next? Directly deal with the fifth prince? Master Chanlong asked. Since you've agreed to Heya, we can't let the fifth prince go. Kaya looked at Jianchen and said. Jianchen lowered his head in thought. There's no hurry in dealing with the fifth prince. He still has quite a lot of people around him right now, so killing him will pose some difficulty. However, battles are commonplace in the Neptunian Divine Palace. I think he won't be able to avoid various battles as long as he moves about in here. And as long as there are battles, his people will definitely become injured or sustain losses. Once his people have suffered heavy casualties, we can deal with him, and it won't be too late either. Aren't you afraid that Yun Xen will die? Kaya suddenly asked. Jianchen shook his head with a smile. Our relationship with the Yun family is only as business partners. Although Yun Xen has left with the fifth prince, preventing us from keeping up our end of the deal of protecting her for a month, we've allowed the Yun family to obtain a spiritual root of heavenly ways after all, which is more than enough to make up for everything. As a result, we don't owe the Yun family anything. Whether the spiritual root of heavenly ways turns out to be a curse or a blessing for Yun Xen will be up to her. Of course, if she can conscientiously leave the Neptunian Divine Palace sooner, she'll be much safer. However, we've already done everything we can. What Yun Xen chooses now has nothing to do with us. Let's go to the Divine Medicinal Garden. With our current strength and Master Chanlong, harvesting the God-tier heavenly resources there should be much easier. The three of them were all confident. Not only had their strengths increased drastically, but they also had the Neptunian mountains as a path of retreat. Even if they encountered opponents they could not defeat, they could retreat to here. Afterwards, the three of them hurried back to the divine medicinal garden with Xiao Zheng, leaving the vicinity of the Neptunian mountains. Jian Qin asked Chanlong secretly, Master Chanlong, can you control the formations of the Neptunian divine palace right now? Chanlong tried to sense his connection silently and shook his head. I can't. I can only control the Grand Exalt's formations within the Neptunian mountains. Jian Qin nodded. He understood the situation now. Very soon, they returned to the divine medicinal garden under Xiao Zheng's lead. However, just when they were about to enter the garden from the winding path, they were all surprised. The huge garden was covered with God-tier heavenly resources, which gave off pure pulses of energy. However, it was completely devoid of people at this moment. There's something wrong. This is very abnormal. Unless the Neptunian divine palace is about to close up, it's impossible for the garden to be completely empty. There must have been something that happened recently. I'll go ask someone about the situation, Xiao Zheng said sternly before immediately heading out to investigate the matter. Very soon Xiao Zheng returned. He said to the trio, a chaotic prime's legacy appeared several 100,000 meters away from the divine medicinal garden. The legacy is somewhat different, where it goes to whoever gains its recognition. As a result, many people have hurried over in hopes of trying their luck. All the people in the garden should be there as well. The light in Jian Chen's eyes flickered from that. He asked Chanlong, Kaya, and Xiao Zheng, are you interested in a chaotic prime's legacy? Chanlong and Kaya both shook their heads. It doesn't matter if I'm interested. Without even thinking, there must be a lot of people gathered there. The difficulty of gaining the legacy's recognition goes without saying, so it is basically the same as wasting time. It's much better if we do something useful with that time instead, Xiao Zheng sighed gently. He knew himself very well. Jian Qin nodded. He no longer paid attention to the chaotic prime's legacy and directly began to break the formations around for the heavenly resources. The formations protecting the heavenly resources were extremely tough, but no matter how tough a formation was, they needed a source of energy. As a result, Master Chanlong cast down his Heaven's Blockade formation around a flower of ways, which cut off the formation's power source. As a result, it was impossible for the formation to replenish its energy. I've already cut off the formation's energy source. I'll let you attack it and waste its remaining energy. That way, we can control our power better, said Master Chanlong. Afterwards, the four of them attacked the formation. Multicolored pulses of energy surged out as the entire garden turned into a huge storm. The formation around the Flower of Ways was very powerful. Even with Chanlong's Heaven's Blockade formation that had cut off its power source, it took them an entire day to waste away all of the formation's energy. With a gentle sound, the formation collapsed, and the Flower of Ways protected in there was completely presented before them. Jian Chen's breathing became slightly ragged as he looked at the Flower of Ways with a burning desire to possess it. He could clearly remember that Fairy Hao Yu had gone as far as to offend the 9th prince of the Blood Sun Empire over a single Flower of Ways, flattening the Yin Mountains of Seven's despair. It said that the Flower of Ways can increase the chances of a peak Godking's breakthrough to infinite prime by 50%. It's extremely precious in the saint's world. Xiao Zheng looked at the Flower of Ways eagerly as well. He coveted it deeply. Jian Qin immediately took out a jade box and stored the Flower of Ways away carefully. He said, there is still quite a few Flower of Ways in the garden, over a dozen of them. Let's dig them all up before splitting them. No one objected. Master Chanlong continued to cast down the Heaven's Blockade formation around a second Flower of Ways. In the blink of an eye, the four of them had already remained in the divine medicinal garden for half a month, and they had dug up all the Flower of Ways there, leaving none behind. Only the roots remained, which would allow it to bloom once again after quite a long time. They did not stop. After digging up the Flower of Ways, they continued onto other God-tier heavenly resources. There were many God-tier heavenly resources in the garden, and there were many varieties as well. They did not recognize most of them, where even the knowledgeable Xiao Zheng had no idea what they were. They were only certain that these heavenly resources were extremely precious, where their value was unimaginable. All the flower of ways that had been dug up were like a drop in an ocean compared to the other god-tier heavenly resources in the garden. At this moment, a burly, middle-aged man appeared in the divine medicinal garden. He watched Jianchen carefully stow away a god-tier heavenly resource and was immediately stunned. Afterwards, he subconsciously looked around and discovered that the flower of ways had all been dug up, reduced to a few roots. His face immediately changed, and he cried out in shock. "You've taken away all the flower of ways? Trap him. We can't let this matter be exposed." Jianchen's face sank, and he charged towards the man without any hesitation, striking out firmly. Kaya attacked at the same time, erupting with shocking battle intent. She used the laws of fire and the laws of destruction together against the man with Jianchen. The man was only a mid-god king. Both Kaya and Jianchen could kill him easily when they were alone, let alone now when they fought together. From a single clash, he was trapped. Then Jianchen rendered him unconscious with a single punch. "Do you want me to place down a formation at the entrance to stop people from coming in?" Master Chanlong asked. Jianchen turned down his suggestion without any hesitation. He said, "Wouldn't that just make it obvious? We can't do that. We need to get through these formations faster." As he said that, Jianchen took out the Enata tower and threw the man in there. The man would wake up very soon. Even if he was immobilized, it was impossible to ensure that he would not spread the news through some other method. Jianchen would only stop worrying after he had thrown him into an isolated world like the Enata Tower. Suddenly, Jianchen's eyes narrowed as he stared at the Enata Tower. An idea flashed through his eyes. Suddenly he raised the Enata Tower into the sky, and under his mental control, it rapidly expanded, becoming 10 meters tall. It directly fell on the formation that protected the god-tier heavenly resource. Immediately, the formation's light flickered rapidly, and its power weakened at an unbelievable rate. With just that, the formation had lost as much as 80% of its power. Jianchen's eyes lit up. He carefully controlled the Enata Tower's power and made it crash down a second time, wanting to break through the formation in a single stroke. Bang! In the end, the Enata Tower directly crushed the formation and struck the ground with force several thousand times greater than a mountain. It caused the entire ground to tremble heavily as if an earthquake had happened. It went without saying that the god-tier heavenly resource had been crushed to pieces. However, the four of them did not feel any pain because of it. Instead, they were all overjoyed. "I never thought that this tower is actually so powerful. It's basically a god artifact that specializes in breaking formations. Fantastic, this is absolutely fantastic. With this tower, we can collect these heavenly resources much faster. We can even clean out the entire garden. However, we have to control the power and only use it once. We can't use it twice on the formations," Master Chanlong said excitedly. Chapter 2060, Cleaning Out the Divine Medicinal Garden, 2. Chanlong, you handle the heavens blockade formations, and will break through the formations. We have to move as quickly as possible and collect as many god-tier heavenly resources as we can before the other people make it back, Jianchen said urgently. These heavenly resources were just far too important to him, as they represented a huge amount of wealth. It would play a direct role in his visits to the Skyfire Plain and the Ice Pole Plain. With the Enata Tower, they managed to get through the formations several times faster. Formations that took them 20 hours originally now only took 4 hours. Their method of getting through the formations was very simple. Every single one of them was first surrounded by a heavens blockade formation to cut off its energy source. Then, they would crush it with Jianchen's Enata Tower once, which would instantly drain 70 to 80% of its power. The remaining energy would be wasted away by a barrage of attacks from Jianchen, Kaya, and Xiao Zheng. It's a pity that I don't possess complete control over all the power of the Enata Tower, so I can't use it to smash the formations a second time. Otherwise, we'd be able to get through the formation in a single stroke with just a few motions from the tower. We'll speed up quite a lot again, Jianchen looked at the damaged tower in his hand that had shrunken to the size of a palm as he felt some pity. For the next period of time, the four of them were extremely busy with collecting heavenly resources. They completely forgot about time and would be able to collect 5 heavenly resources at the very least every day. As a result, in just over a month, they had collected over 100 God-tier heavenly resources of different grades. During this time, Kaya, Chanlong, and Xiaojing had to rest several times due to consuming too much origin energy. They used up supreme quality divine crystals to recover. Only Jianchen did not seem exhausted over the entire period due to the fact that he cultivated chaotic force, which was consumed at an extremely gradual pace. Only he could vaguely sense that the chaotic Niden in his dantian had shrunken slightly compared to before. Sigh, what bad luck. There were so many god kings, yet they all lost to a mere overgod, allowing that tiny overgod to obtain the chaotic prime's legacy. Yeah, it really is difficult to accept. That's a legacy from a chaotic prime. Even if we can't get it, at least some other god king would get it. I never thought it would end up with an overgod. But that overgod won't have it easy either. A chaotic prime's legacy isn't so easy to take. There are quite a few god kings who have remained outside where the legacy is. As soon as she emerges, they won't let her go. That doesn't matter anymore. Our talent is limited after all, nowhere close to those supreme prodigies. It's far too unlikely for us to obtain the legacy of a chaotic prime. It'll be much better if we stay in the garden and get a flower of ways so that we can prepare for the breakthrough to the primordial realm in the future. At this moment, 5 men and women in similar attires but with varying ages walked in from outside as they conversed with one another. They directly arrived in the garden. But very soon, the 5 of them became stunned. They all stared ahead at the same time. All they saw was a 10-meter-tall tower hovering in the sky. The tower was very damaged, and all 9 floors were covered with sword slashes. It had been ruined to the point where it seemed nowhere like its original shape. However, even though the tower was severely damaged, it still gave off an extremely powerful presence, pressuring the 5 of them greatly to the point where they found it to be suffocating. Boom! Under their gazes, the tower fell down on a formation with the force of a mountain. With a heavy rumble, the energy that supported the formation weakened at an unbelievable speed. Oh my God, is there something wrong with my eyes? Just a single smash from the tower has drained 80% of the formation's energy. The 5 people were left speechless on the spot when they sensed the energy vanish from the formation. They stared at the tower with burning desire. It's a god artifact for destroying formations. It's literally made for getting through formations. The formations around the god-tier heavenly resources are basically like nothing before the person who possesses it. All the flower of ways are gone, with none left. Were they all taken away by the 4 of them? The 5 people from the same organization cried out as surprise and joy filled their faces. They all stared at Jianchen. The 10-meter-tall tower had already shrunken to the size of a hand. Currently, it sat in Jianchen's palm. Jianchen looked at the 5 people who had just entered coldly. Chanlong, Kaya, and Xiaojing stopped as well. They also looked at the 5 people as their faces sank slightly. The group of 5 was composed of 3 males and 2 women. Aside from a female mid-god king, the rest of them were late god kings. It was not difficult to kill them all with the strength of Jianchen's side, but they could not prevent these people from fleeing. Among the 5 people, the light in the eyes of an older middle-aged man flickered by an undetectable amount after studying all their cultivation. He immediately clasped his fist at them and said, "We come from the White Cloud sect of the Skyfire Plane. Greetings to you all." The Skyfire Plane? You come from the Skyfire Plane? Jianchen was immediately surprised from that. The middle-aged man was surprised as well by Jianchen's reaction. He smiled. "That's right, we come from the Skyfire Plane." "Do you come from the Skyfire Plane as well?" "I'm not from there, but I do have someone close on the Skyfire Plane," Jianchen said as the light in his eyes flickered. The middle-aged man chuckled aloud. "It looks like there is some fate that has brought us together. Fellows, now that the Chaotic Prime's legacy already has an owner, the people who left here will return to the garden very soon. You don't have much time left." With that, the middle-aged man continued, "There's not much time left even with your strength and the formation-destroying treasure, so the amount of heavenly resources you can harvest will be limited. However, we're willing to help you get through the formations, and we only want a flower of ways." "Sure." After a moment of hesitation, Jian Qin agreed in the end. One reason was because they were from the Skyfire plane, so he could learn a little about the Taoist sect of divine sound from them. Another reason was that they did not have complete confidence in preventing all 5 of these people from leaving. As long as one escaped, there would be great trouble. Afterwards, with the addition of the 5 God Kings from the White Cloud sect, they got through formations even faster. The 4 hours had shrunk down to around 1 hour, so in just half a day, they managed to get through over a dozen formations. However, due to the addition of outsiders, both Jian Qin and Kaya became wary. They held back their strengths, suppressing it to the level of early God Kings. What the profound formation! It can actually cut off these formations' contact with the world, preventing them from replenishing their power through the Neptunian Divine Palace. The 5 God Kings of the White Cloud sect were amazed by Master Chanlong's formations. However, when they saw the Enata Tower, they showed extremely well-hidden desire and greed. Jian Qin, Kaya, Xiaozheng, and Chanlong did not seem to discover the burning desire in the eyes of the God Kings from the White Cloud sect. They were completely focused on getting through the formations so that they could collect as many God-tier heavenly resources as they could. During this time, some other people had returned to the divine medicinal garden one after another. However, all of them suffered horrible fates. They were killed off with the teamwork from the God Kings of the White Cloud sect. Ever since the God Kings from the White Cloud sect had joined them, Jian Qin and Kaya could only display strength they should have possessed as early God Kings, diligently wasting away the formation's energy. Naturally, the 5 God Kings from the White Cloud sect who believed that they were more powerful dealt with the cultivators who came into the garden. "Elder Ing, I feel like there's something up with Jian Qin and the others," one of the 5 God Kings, the weakest female, secretly said to a middle-aged man after killing 2 waves of cultivators. Elder Ing was the middle-aged man who had initially spoken to Jian Qin. He was the most powerful person out of all the elders from the White Cloud sect. Not a single late God King elder of the White Cloud sect was his opponent alone, so he naturally became the backbone of the group. "Elder Shi, what's wrong?" Eldering asked. They communicated secretly, so aside from the 2 of them, even the 3 other people from the White Cloud sect could not hear what they were saying. "Don't you feel that it's too peaceful? They don't fear us at all, and even when we killed the God Kings who entered here before, they did not react in the slightest," Elder Shi said as she studied Jian Chen's group secretly. "Huh, Elder Shi, look at how focused they are at getting through the formation. Just that shows that they're definitely not as composed as they seem. Their composure is just an act, a reaction from their nerves. Moreover, the 4 of them are all early God Kings after all, so how great of a mess do you think they can make?" Elder Ing replied without caring too much. He did not take Jian Chen's group seriously at all. "But there are no buts, Elder Shi. Do you really lack so much confidence in us? We have 4 late God Kings and you, a mid-God King. Is that not enough to deal with the people before us?" Elder Ing cut off Elder Shi rather impatiently. Elder Shi no longer said anything else. She looked at the 4 of them from time to time. She just felt that something was off, and she suspected that their composure was not an act. It was like her group really was not on their mind. However, when she reached this conclusion, even she struggled to believe it. She had already used a secret technique of the White Cloud sect to study the 4 of them, and they were indeed early God Kings. How could 4 early God Kings pose any threat to them? Jian Qin also asked about the Taoist sect of divine sound, but to his disappointment, their sects were just too far apart. As such, their knowledge was extremely limited. Apart from learning that the Taoist sect of divine sound was located in the central region of the Skyfire Plain, he learnt nothing new. As the formations were destroyed one after another, they collected more and more God-tier heavenly resources. Whenever they collected an extra heavenly resource, the hearts of the 5 God Kings would beat faster. Their deep excitement and burning desire were buried in their hearts. It was as if Jian Qin was not the person collecting the heavenly resources but they themselves. There are another 3 God Kings. One of them is a late God King. At this moment, Elder Ying's face sank slightly. He left Kaya, Jian Chen, and so on to break through the formations as they directly advanced to stop the people. They purposefully chose to fight at the only entrance, as they were afraid that Jian Chen and the others would flee while they were busy. So you are collecting the heavenly resources in secret here, and you want to silence us by killing us. Don't you dare. The late God King who fought against the elders of the White Cloud sect understood everything in the garden very soon and bellowed out. He did not stick around any longer, fleeing rapidly by paying a heavy price. God damn it, we let him escape, the elders of the White Cloud sect cursed. Then they slaughtered the 2 other God Kings mercilessly before returning with pale faces. The news will be leaked very soon. Once other people learn that we have a large quantity of God-tier heavenly resources on us, they won't let us go. A large group of people will hunt us down, so we have to leave immediately, Elder Ying growled as his expression seemed horrible. Jian Chen's group understood the severity of the matter. They immediately stopped attacking the formations. Jian Chen put away the Aneta Tower before leaving with the 5 elders of the White Cloud sect. Chanlong removed the Heavens Blockade formation as well. Without it, the formation immediately began to replenish the energy it lost after the Anna Tower struck it through the Neptunian Divine Palace. Several 100,000 kilometers away from the Divine Medicinal Garden, there was a dwelling. An extremely powerful formation that radiated with powerful pulses of energy completely surrounded it. Many experts gathered outside the formation, with both overgods and God Kings. There were even some gods there. I refuse to believe that she can take away the Chaotic Prime's legacy with so many people guarding this place. All she can blame is that her cultivation is too low. She's only an overgod, and she has obtained the legacy of a Chaotic Prime. Not only will it fail to benefit her, but she'll even end up meeting her fate instead. A group of God Kings stood outside the formation. They did not move away at all. They discussed with soft voices as they smiled viciously. All of them stared at the interior of the dwelling. There was a girl who only seemed to be 15 or 16, standing up straight next to a large tree in the outer layer of the crowd. She also stared at the dwelling nervously. Sister Ziyun, you have to come out fine. You can't let anything happen to you. You can't come out. Don't come out. The girl clutched her hands as she constantly prayed inside. She worried very much as her face paled slightly. Her cultivation was extremely low. She was still at the mortal realm, only having become an Earth Saint Master recently. Let alone the godhood experts gathered here, even the battle shockwaves from some origin realm experts would be enough to take the life of such a puny existence. It was extremely dangerous for her to be standing here. Fortunately, there were no battles in the vicinity of the dwelling. At this moment, a bloodied God King shot over from the distance with lightning speed. He called out from very far away, "Someone has a treasure that specializes in getting through formations and harvested the heavenly resources in the Divine Medicinal Garden en masse. They've cleaned out a quarter of the entire place, and not a single flower of ways is left. Immediately stop them if you want heavenly resources. If you waste any more time, they'll clean the whole place out." What? They've cleaned out a quarter of the Divine Medicinal Garden? Are you kidding me? There are over 1,000 God-tier heavenly resources in the garden. Doesn't that mean they've taken over 200 heavenly resources? Heavens, only a few of the heavenly resources in there are taken away each time the Neptunian Divine Palace is opened. Now a quarter of the entire place has been emptied. There was a huge chain reaction. All the God Kings around the dwelling gasped when they heard the news, as they were shocked. There were some people who did not believe it as well, bearing suspicion towards that. They believed that this God King held other intentions, where he was probably connected to the overgod who had gained the legacy. He wanted to draw them all away using a diversion. Chapter 2062, Identity Exposed. I have been telling the truth, with no lies at all. If you don't believe me, I can swear on the world, where if I am telling any lies, I am willing for my soul to be destroyed. The late God King swore an oath firmly, as he was worried. He said frantically, "Everyone, please go to the Divine Medicinal Garden. We can't waste any time at all. If they manage to escape far away, it'll be almost impossible for us to find them. Are you willing to leave with nothing while others have taken away a quarter of all the heavenly resources in the divine medicinal garden happily? After the late God King swore an oath, there were indeed quite a few people who believed his words. A God King immediately called out from among the crowd around the formation, "It doesn't matter whether he's lying or not. It's not like the divine medicinal garden is far away. It wouldn't hurt to check, and if it's true, we can't let them leave. Let's go. Come with me, brothers, to check on the divine medicinal garden." Many God Kings departed from the place, rushing off to the garden in small groups. Naturally, they moved extremely quickly as God Kings, crossing several 100,000 kilometers very soon. They appeared in the garden. However, when they saw the landscape of the garden, all of their faces changed. Indeed, a quarter of all the heavenly resources there had been taken away. Immediately, some people broadcasted this sight through various means and drew over another large group of God Kings. For a moment, the news that someone had emptied out a quarter of the entire garden surpassed the news of the chaotic prime's dwelling, causing all the God Kings outside the dwelling to hurry off to the garden. God damn it! Which bastard did this? How did he clean out so many heavenly resources in such a short amount of time? We 3 brothers stayed here for so long, yet we failed to get through any of the formations even after using all we had. And they've dug up a quarter of everything. Before the chaotic prime's dwelling appeared, not a single heavenly resource had been taken away. Now that we're back here, so many of them are actually gone. It's truly unbelievable. You know what this means? This means that they got through over 100 formations in just under a month's time. Fortunately, we got here early, or the entire place probably would have been emptied out, and we would have known nothing. We can't let those people leave with so many heavenly resources. These heavenly resources should belong to everyone. Everyone is entitled to a portion. That's right. We can't let them leave the Neptunian divine palace. An uproar immediately exploded in the garden. Many God Kings spoke through gritted teeth, especially when they glanced at how a quarter of the place was empty. All of them burned with envy. Calm down, everyone. Allow me to use a secret technique and turn back time so that we can see just how so many heavenly resources were taken away. A ruddy old man in white robes stood forwards from the crowd at a steady pace. Under the eager gazes of all the God Kings, he directly arrived in the center of the garden and used a secret technique to turn back time there. Clearly, this was an extremely profound ability. After it was used, the space there immediately became hazy as disorderly time and space clashed together, creating an intense conflict, reducing the image there to chaos. However, when the chaotic space cleared up once again, it immediately revealed Jian Chen's group working with the 5 God Kings from the White Cloud sect. The 9 of them were presented clearly before all the God Kings in the garden through the secret technique. It is actually him. I've seen him before. His name is Jian Chen. He defeated Mo Cheng, who ranked first on the Overgod's plaque when he was an Overgod as well. I never thought he would have become a God King now. That is indeed Jian Chen. I personally witnessed his battle against Mo Cheng. There were many God Kings that died to his hands. He's extremely powerful. Many God Kings recognized Jian Chen with a single glance, and they all cried out. They were just too surprised by this. They had never thought that the person who had taken away all these heavenly resources was Jian Chen. Everybody look. The treasure for destroying formations is in Jian Chen's hands. What kind of treasure is that? The formations around the heavenly resources are so powerful, yet all their energy were basically wasted away after the tower crushed down. The Inata tower in Jian Chen's hand had become the center of attention. However, the image from the secret technique was unable to conjure the Inata tower, even though it presented the 9 people clearly. As a result, everyone could only see a hazy golden light, unable to see the true appearance of the Inata tower. At this moment, the image shattered like a piece of glass while the old man who had used the secret technique paled and tottered heavily. He stood there trembling as he said weakly, "This treasure is extraordinary. When I used my secret technique, not only did I manage to bring back their presences clearly, but I even brought back a sliver of the treasure's presence. However, that presence interfered with the secret technique, causing me to suffer an intense backlash. Before he could finish speaking, the old man vomited a mouthful of blood. He was clearly very injured. What is this treasure? It's so powerful. All the god kings were astounded. Strange thoughts crossed their heads, but soon afterwards, they all dispersed. They said that they were going to look for Jian Chen as they left the garden in a hurry. Many of them used secret techniques in an attempt to track down Jian Chen through various methods. At the same time, a woman who only seemed to be in her 20s was hidden deep in the chaotic prime's dwelling several hundreds of thousand kilometers away from the garden. She peered through the formation with her beautiful eyes as she carefully observed the outside. She was the overgod all the god kings mentioned, the one who had obtained the chaotic prime's legacy. In reality, she had indeed obtained the entire legacy of the chaotic prime during the days in the dwelling. The cultivation method, battle skills, comprehension of the laws of the world, and the different knowledge from the chaotic prime had already entered her mind many days ago, firmly embedded in the depths of her soul. At the same time, she had broken through with her cultivation, becoming a god king. However, there were just far too many god kings waiting outside the formation, so the woman did not dare to leave after obtaining the chaotic prime's legacy. Xiao Man is still outside. I hope that nothing happens to her, the woman worried as she observed the outside nervously. Even though most of the god kings had left due to what happened in the divine medicinal garden, there were still over 30 god kings guarding the place, including late god kings. Even though the woman had obtained a chaotic prime's legacy, she still had no confidence in escaping from these god kings. After all, she had obtained the legacy far too recently. Coupled with the fact that she was always worried about Xiao Man outside, she was unable to calm down and comprehend the details of the legacy. It's a pity that I've used up all the life-saving items that Master and Master's wife left behind during the days in the Neptunian Divine Palace. Suddenly, the woman's face changed. She silently sensed the surroundings, and her heart immediately sank. Oh no! I've taken away the legacy and also drained all the energy in this dwelling. The formation outside is weakening rapidly. It'll be useless before long. After hesitating for a short while, the woman gritted her teeth and became determined. Without hiding anymore, she charged out of the dwelling as quickly as she could. Chapter 2063, Greedy Human Nature. She has come out. She has come out. Miss, hold on. The eyes of all the people outside the formation immediately lit up. At basically the same time, they all shot off towards the woman, radiating with the tremendous presence of god kings. When the several dozen presences merged together in the air, even origin energy seemed to freeze up. Moreover, under their explicit control, all of their presences crushed towards the woman as if they wanted to use the pressure from the presences to cut off the woman's ability to escape. The lady was extremely grim. She did not seem to be affected much at all as she continued to charge outwards as quickly as she could. God King, she has actually become a God King. No wonder she can endure our presences so easily. It is a chaotic prime's legacy after all. It has only been so long, and it has already made her into a God King. The God Kings struggled to remain calm as they all cried out. Afterwards, their burning desires and greed became more intense. A late God King caught up to the lady very soon. She was naturally not a late God King's opponent, as she had only become a God King recently, where she lost the upper hand right from the first clash. Instead, she borrowed the force of the attack and sped up some more. She immediately arrived before Xiao Man, who had been waiting outside. She grabbed Xiao Man's hand and fled into the distance hurriedly. Sister Ziyun, are you fine? Xiao Man looked at the blood oozing from the corner of Ziyun's lips as she had become completely pale. She felt extremely worried and nervous. Ziyun gritted her teeth and said nothing. She used a secret technique as she devoted herself to unleashing her full strength. Stop wasting your efforts. You can't escape. Over 30 God Kings tailed Ziyun. The late God Kings, in particular, moved much faster than Ziyun, so the distance between them was shrinking rapidly. At the same time, Jian Chen's group fled with the 5 God Kings of the White Cloud sect, only stopping 1,000,000 kilometers away from the divine medicinal garden. It should be safe here. We're already so far away from the divine medicinal garden. Even if people pass us right now, they won't be able to connect us to what happened in the divine medicinal garden, said Elder Ing. He showed much excitement. It was not just him. The 4 other elders were the same as they all stared at Jianchen. Jianchen, on the other hand, directly took out a flower of ways and said to the people from the White Cloud sect, "Thank you for your assistance in breaking through the formations. If it were not for your help, we would have never harvested as many heavenly resources. According to our agreement, this flower of ways belongs to you." The 5 of them looked at one another before gazing at Jianchen deeply. One of the elders said rather strangely, "Brother, we've helped you get through so many formations, and we've killed quite a lot of people who came into the garden. As such, without any exaggeration, it would have been impossible for you to collect so many God-tier heavenly resources without us. We've contributed so much, yet you're only giving us a single flower of ways. You can't treat us 5 elders of the White Cloud sect like beggars." Jianchen thought it over seriously and said, "That's right. Your addition has indeed allowed us to collect over 20 extra God-tier heavenly resources. Although we did have an agreement earlier, giving you a single flower of ways is indeed too selfish of us. How about this? We'll split the heavenly resources we collected after you joined us half and half. I can give you 3 flower of ways and over a dozen more God-tier heavenly resources." The faces of the 5 elders did not change. They all shook their head gently. "Is that still not enough? How about I give you another 3 heavenly resources?" Jianchen said, "It's too little, far too little. It's completely different from what we were expecting," said Elder Ing. "Then how much do you want?" Jianchen's face sank as he showed displeasure. However, he secretly sneered inside. He already knew what the God Kings of the White Cloud sect wanted. "What we want is all the heavenly resources on you. We've counted the number of heavenly resources dug up several times, and it comes out to a total of 266. We want all 266, Elder Ing snickered as he stared at Jianchen with ill intent. His excitement inside, on the other hand, was about to burst out. Aside from those organizations that stood at the apex of the Saints' world with great heritage, it was impossible for anyone else to possess 266 God-tier heavenly resources across the entire Saints' world. If so many of these heavenly resources had appeared in the Saints' world, it would be enough to cause a disturbance and even make primordial realm experts green with envy. It's not just the 266 heavenly resources on you. That tower you possess also interests us, added another elder as his eyes shone. "You are going too far," Jianchen growled. The elders looked at one another and smiled. "We're not going too far. We're not going too far at all. The only one you can blame is yourself because you're too weak, and you don't have the strength to protect your wealth." Kaya stood forwards. Her eyes were cold as she said emotionlessly, "I feel like even if we give you everything, you still won't let us go. It looks like you're not stupid. But there's nothing we can do about that either. Let alone the 5 of us, even if we involve the entire White Cloud sect, we won't be able to keep over 200 God-tier heavenly resources. As a result, to keep this a secret, we can only silence you forever," the female late God King said sternly as killing intent shone in her eyes. She stabbed out at Kaya with her sword without any hesitation, moving extremely quickly. It reached Kaya's forehead in a single instance. Clearly, she wanted to kill Kaya with a single stroke. When the woman moved, the 4 other God Kings aside from Elder Ing all charged at Jianchen, Chanlong, and Xiaozheng. They surged with killing intent. Elder Ing, on the other hand, stood there with his hands crossed as if victory was already determined. Kaya's face did not change. Suddenly, she raised her right hand. It seemed to move very slowly, but it was extraordinarily quick in reality. A destructive presence emanated from her index finger as she directly pointed it at the sword. Her movement was extremely quick and seemed to follow a trajectory that abided with the universe, possessing the profound truths of the world. It completely exceeded the late God King's sword, arriving first despite moving second. It landed on the weakest point of the sword and produced a screeching of metal. Immediately, The great power and laws on the sword completely leaked away like a popped balloon from Kai Ya's simple-looking gesture. It vanished completely, returning to the surroundings. It was as if Kai Ya's gesture possessed the supreme power of the universe, directly breaking down the power on the sword from both cultivation and laws. The late God King was shocked. She stared at Kai Ya in disbelief as her eyes narrowed significantly. A black light condensed from the power of the laws of destruction was clearly reflected in her pupils. It moved through the air and expanded in her eyes, directly moving towards her forehead. Chapter 2064. 4 dead, 1 escaped spurt. A bloody, finger-sized hole immediately appeared in the forehead of the late God King. Her entire head had been pierced, causing red and white matter to spurt out from the back of her head. Her soul had been destroyed directly. Her eyes bulged in disbelief. She refused to believe that a mere early God King could be so terrifying. As a result, even though she was already dead, she could not rest. At the same time, Jian Chen clashed with a male late God King from the White Cloud sect. Chaotic force filled his entire body as he became filled with explosive power. It was extremely terrifying. Moreover, the laws of the sword revolved around him, and with a single thought, a strand of sword chi instantly condensed on his hand. It shone with dazzling light as he slashed out with chaotic force, directly clashing with the late God King head-on. Not only are you, a mere early God King, not taking me seriously, but you even overestimate yourself and want to take me on in an open confrontation. You sure are bold, so let me show you the power of a late God King so that you can personally understand just how great the effects of differing cultivation levels will cause, sneered the man from the White Cloud sect. He looked at Jian Chen disdainfully as the sword in his hand pulsed with energy. He stabbed at Jian Chen with the power of laws from late God King. Jian Chen was only an early God King right now, so in terms of laws, there was still a great difference compared to a late God King. Even the fact that the laws of the sword possessed the greatest defensive power was unable to make up for this difference. As a result, when they clashed, Jian Chen did not gain the upper hand in terms of laws. However, his chaotic force was extraordinary, possessing unimaginable power. The chaotic force in the sword chi radiated with a violent, destructive presence as it cut through the laws of the late God King like a hot knife through butter with the laws of the sword, directly dispersing it. Impossible. This is impossible. You're clearly just an early God King, so how did you block my attack? The man's eyes narrowed as disbelief filled his face. He was not just shocked about how Jian Chen had blocked his strike, but also due to the power in the strike. The power of the strike left him completely astounded even though he was a late God King. It actually numbed his entire right hand, causing him to lose all sensation in it. His hand that held the sword had ripped open, causing blood to pour out while the bones in his fingers had all shattered. Why, you were hiding your strength in the divine medicinal garden? But you're clearly just an early God King, so how can you possess such great strength? Are you a divine beast of great strength? The man cried out as his face changed rapidly. Jian Chen said nothing. His eyes also flickered with cold killing intent, and with a thought, a strand of Daluo sword chi instantly condensed. It shot through the man's forehead with a flash of golden light. Even though the man was a late God King, he was not as powerful as Bai Qi or Bai He. Jian Chen could even kill the siblings when they worked together, so killing this person naturally did not take too much effort. Their battle only lasted for a short moment. Kai Ya and Jian Chen both slaughtered their opponents despite possessing weaker cultivation. However, Chanlong and Xiao Zhang's situation was not as great. Chanlong was stuck receiving strikes from his late God King opponent. He was a formations master, so he possessed great mastery over the way of formations. If he could use his formations, he could kill late God Kings effortlessly, but without them, even mid-God Kings would cause great trouble for him with his personal battle prowess alone. The late God King who fought with Chanlong naturally knew that the latter was skilled with formations, so he launched a barrage of attacks right from the start, giving Chanlong no time to cast down formations. As a result, Chanlong vomited blood wildly as he was heavily injured. If it were not for the azure disc that protected him, he probably would have suffered even worse injuries. Xiao Zheng completely lost the upper hand as well, forced into a retreat by the mid-god king. However, fortunately, Xiao Zheng was not a weaker early god king, even though his battle prowess could not be compared to those supreme prodigies. Coupled with how he had already reached the peak of early god king and was only a step away from mid-god king, he was able to endure the swift attacks of the mid-god king for a while. Elder Ing watched the battle in the distance with his arms crossed as he smiled faintly. He began to think about how to split all the heavenly resources after he obtained them all, but his face changed very soon. He stared at the two late god kings slain by Jianchen and Kaiya as his heart churned. Oh no, we're in trouble. They're wolves in sheep's clothing. Elder Shi, run away quickly. Go. Elder Ing reacted extremely quickly and immediately called out to Elder Shi. He did not waste any time himself either, turning around and fleeing into the distance without any concern for the other people on his side. The two late god kings Jianchen and Kaiya killed basically possessed the same strength as him. They had been killed off easily, so the other party could naturally kill off Elder Ing effortlessly as well. Elder Ing understood this extremely well, so he chose to flee without any hesitation after seeing the two god kings die. Linear lightning release. Jianchen's eyes locked onto Elder Ing, and he pursued him as a bolt of lightning, stopping him from fleeing. Kaiya, on the other hand, went to assist Qianlong, blocking the late god king for him. Elder Ying's face became extraordinarily vicious when he faced Jianchen, who was clearly an early god king but possessed frightening battle prowess. He yelled at Elder Shi, who fled in the other direction, "Elder Shi, don't forget to leak the fact that they have 266 god-tier heavenly resources. We can't let them have it easy, nor can we let them keep so many god-tier heavenly resources effortlessly." As he said that, Elder Ing did not fight with Jianchen. He used a secret technique to continue fleeing, but a strand of sword chi punched through his chest. Elder Ying's words were clearly an attempt to make Jianchen realize that Elder Shi was running away as well so that he could distract him and create an opportunity to escape. However, he failed in the end. Elder Shi clearly understood Elder Ying's intentions. Her face immediately changed, and she cursed inside before activating a simple talisman in her space ring without any hesitation at all. It formed a barrier of energy around her as she used a secret technique to speed up by burning her essence blood. Naturally, Jianchen did not want to let Elder Shi escape, as she would then leak the fact that they possessed so many god-tier heavenly resources. With a thought, he immediately shot a strand of profound sword chi towards Elder Shi. Boom! The profound sword chi struck the protective barrier around Elder Shi, causing it to rumble loudly. The barrier shook violently, but it did not shatter in the end. Elder Shi shot off with terrifying speed after burning her essence blood, instantly vanishing into the horizon. That talisman is impressive to be able to block a strand of my profound sword chi. It should come from a primordial realm expert. Jianchen was shocked as his face sank slightly. Then he killed off Elder Ing with his full strength. The battle ended very quickly. Aside from Elder Shi, who managed to escape, all the other people from the White Cloud sect had been slain. Out of Jianchen's group, only Qianlong suffered some heavier injuries, while Xiaozhen was only slightly wounded. We can't keep the fact that we've obtained so many god-tier heavenly resources a secret anymore. It looks like it'll be troublesome in the future, said Master Qianlong, but he showed no fear at all. Chapter 2065. The Neptunian Moon, 1. Jianchen smiled indifferently in response to Qianlong's words and said, "We're different from before. Kaiya and I have both become god kings, so there's basically no people left that can threaten us in the Neptunian Divine Palace. Even if that fact gets leaked, I believe we can still keep all the heavenly resources with our strength. Even if it does get leaked, not everyone will believe what they say." Jianchen seemed to think of something when he reached here. He gradually became stern and said, "What we should truly be wary of is the people outside the Neptunian Divine Palace. Not only are infinite primes from many planes gathered out there, but there are also terrifying existences that are chaotic primes. We're as puny as ants before people like that." Jianchen's right. Even if they leak this information, not everyone will believe it, And even those people who do won't be certain that we possess the God-tier heavenly resources without checking our space rings. With Brother Jianchen's strength, it'll just be wishful thinking for them to want to check your space ring, said Xiao Zheng as he looked at Jianchen and Kai in admiration. Jianchen nodded slightly. He agreed very much with Xiao Zheng's words. Afterwards, they collected the space rings of the 4 god kings from the White Cloud sect. Looking at the corpses on the group, Jianchen pondered for a while. Afterwards, a pink, palm-sized orchid appeared in his hand with a thought. The orchid had evolved from the seed of the immortal devouring orchid recently. After absorbing a droplet of his chaotic blood that was not exactly pure, it metamorphosed, and when they were collecting the god-tier heavenly resources, the evolved seed finally germinated, blooming into a beautiful, pale pink flower. The orchid was very extraordinary. As soon as it had bloomed, it was already self-conscious, possessing a very weak consciousness. It was hazy and still not enough to communicate with Jianchen, but he could vaguely feel emotional pulses from the consciousness from time to time. Jianchen held the young immortal devouring flower close to the corpses of the 4 god kings and expressed his thoughts gently. He had learned from the sword spirits that the immortal devouring orchid especially grew through devouring immortals, so he wanted to see if these god kings would be useful to the orchid. There was not much difference between the cultivators and immortals of the saints' world and the immortals' world. They all absorbed the energy of the world and comprehended the laws of the world to strengthen themselves. The only difference was the name. However, when the immortal devouring orchid approached the corpses, it could not help but tremble violently as its petals shriveled up at that moment. A blurry thought with great fear appeared in Jianchen's head. Jianchen was slightly surprised before understanding the situation soon. He immediately took the immortal devouring orchid far away from the corpses. Even though the orchid was extraordinary, it was still too weak. The corpses and blood of god kings were just too terrifying to it. Even just a single droplet of blood possessed enough energy to destroy it countless times over, so it did not dare to touch the corpses, let alone devour them. It looks like I need to take it step by step for you to grow rapidly. There are no shortcuts, Jianchen said softly in quite some disappointment. He stowed the immortal devouring orchid away before traveling off into the distance with Kaiya, Chanlong, and Xiao Zheng. Before long, the 4 of them encountered over a dozen god kings. When they saw Jianchen's group, they beamed in surprise and immediately surrounded them without any hesitation. Jianchen, we've finally found you. You've made us search so hard. The god kings looked at the 4 of them and could not help but smile. They were all extremely excited. Everyone, may I ask why you are looking for us? Jianchen's group frowned. But, for the god-tier heavenly resources of course. The divine medicinal garden is so big, yet you've emptied out a quarter of it, and you want to keep it all to yourself. Isn't your appetite just a little too big? You need to share some of it with us after all, right everyone? A god king sneered. That's right. It's not like we want a lot of it either. We just want half, no, a third of it. If you give us a third of everything, we'll leave immediately. Hurry up and hand it over. We don't want much, just a third of it. The god kings all spoke out. They seemed rather urgent. They wanted to take the heavenly resources and leave immediately. They only want a third of everything because they knew that there were many god kings on the 9th floor searching for Jianchen everywhere, and they would constantly increase. If they took everything away, they would not be able to keep it with their strength, so they wanted to leave a portion for the other people and leave the Neptunian Divine Palace while the others fought over it. Do you really think that we have all these heavenly resources on us just because of what someone said? Jianchen asked. He felt that something was off from the expressions of the god kings. No matter how he looked at it, it was as if they were extremely certain that he possessed all the heavenly resources and felt no doubt about it at all. Haha, I knew you would say that. Never would you realize that someone has already turned back time in the divine medicinal garden, reconstructing the past there, so what you did in there is no longer a secret. A god king laughed aloud. Turning back time? Is that the case? Jianchen's face sank, and even Kaiya, Chanlong, and Xiao Jing revealed ugly expressions. They would not have worried if someone had purposefully revealed this matter, as someone's word would not be persuasive at all. Very few people would believe it. However, turning back time and revealing the past was completely different, as it was firm evidence that could not be doubted. You want God-tier heavenly resources? Go collect it from the divine medicinal garden yourself, Jianchen responded coldly. Since you're not going to hand it over, we can only come and get it ourselves. Brothers, let's get them together. Once we kill them, we'll split the God-tier heavenly resources evenly. We can't waste time. With someone leading the God Kings, they all attacked Jianchen's group, engaging in an intense battle. However, their strength was clearly on different levels. Even though one side had over a dozen people, possessing an absolute numerical advantage, they only had 4 late God Kings. The rest of them were early and mid-God Kings, and their strength was extremely ordinary, so how were they Jianchen and Kaiya's opponent? As a result, as soon as the battle started, it became completely one-sided. Jianchen and Kaiya created a huge mess out of the God Kings with their slaughter, where the early God Kings were slain in a single strike. Chapter 2066. The Neptunian Moon, 2. As their opponents were all merciless, wanting to kill them with every strike in an attempt to rob them of their belongings, Jianchen's group did not hold back either. As a result, all the God Kings died soon after the battle had begun. Before long, over a dozen corpses appeared on the ground. All the God Kings who wanted to take their heavenly resources died there, where none of them managed to escape. Only Xiao Zheng was injured on Jianchen's side. Qianlong managed to cast down his formations in time, so he could use them against his opponents, allowing him to emerge unscathed. As for Jianchen and Kaiya, regular God Kings were no longer able to harm them, as they had become God Kings. They were close to being invincible despite only having broken through recently. Jianchen thought about the young immortal devouring orchid again when he looked at all the corpses. He could only sigh in pity. It would have been fantastic if the immortal devouring orchid was powerful enough so that he could feed the corpses to it. He had thought about collecting the corpses and preserving them for when the immortal devouring orchid was powerful enough, but the sword spirits had already warned him that corpses that had been dead for too long would only be detrimental to the immortal devouring orchid. After the battle, Xiao Zheng and Qianlong became extremely stern. Qianlong said, "Jianchen, the development of this issue is rather unexpected. There are probably a lot of God Kings looking for us on this floor. Although we did not fear this small group, once many God Kings band together against us and even supreme experts from the God King's throne take part, it'll be extremely difficult for us to deal with them with our strength. I think we better return to the Neptunian mountains sooner." Jianchen sank into his thoughts from what Qianlong had said. He also frowned gently. Although his current strength was greater than the average God King, he did not become blinded by confidence at all. He understood that there was still a portion of God Kings who could pose a threat to him in the Neptunian Divine Palace, such as the old man beside Mo Cheng and the God artifact wielding Mr. Shu from the Sky Empire. They all pressured him. Even though he had become a God King now, he still did not have complete confidence in defeating them. This was because he knew that they were far more powerful than regular late God Kings, let alone the fact that one of them had a God artifact. He had no idea how many more supreme God Kings had gathered in the Neptunian Divine Palace apart from the two of them. None of them could be underestimated. If they took part in the hunt for him, he would indeed be troubled or even face the threat of death. Jianchen was even certain that there would definitely be supreme experts from the God King's throne among all the God Kings searching for him. After all, their harvest was just too bountiful. They had dug up a quarter of over 1,000 God-tier heavenly resources in the divine medicinal garden. This was already enough to attract envy from primordial realm experts. They would even go as far as to lay their lives down for so many heavenly resources. Indeed, their current situation was bad. We should avoid the center of attention temporarily and not move around in the Neptunian Divine Palace for some time. I plan on returning to the 8th floor, Jianchen said after some thought. He looked at Kaiya and said, "Kaiya, Xiao Zheng, are you going to return to the Neptunian mountains with Qianlong first? Right now, it's the safest place for the two of you without a doubt." The light in Kaiya's eyes shimmered. She said, "Just let Xiao Zheng and Qianlong return to the Neptunian mountains. I'll go with you." After all, with my strength, I should be able to provide some assistance to you. That too works as well. Let's just do that then. We'll accompany Qianlong and Xiao Zheng to the Neptunian mountains first before going to the 8th floor, said Jianchen. Afterwards, they escorted Qianlong and Xiao Zheng to the Neptunian mountains. At the same time, Jianchen got Qianlong to hide their presence within a cave there through the Grand Exalt's formation before taking out all the heavenly resources and splitting them among themselves. With over 200 God-tier heavenly resources placed in a small cave, just the heavy fragrance alone would have been enough to spread far, far away. If it were not for Qianlong's isolation through his formations, probably the presence of the heavenly resources would have been enough to alarm all the God Kings cultivating in the mountains. These heavenly resources should be worth quite a few 5-colored divine crystals. Jianchen was filled with eagerness as he looked at the various assortments of heavenly resources. At this moment, a fist-sized beast flew out from Kai Ya's space ring. Its eyes shone brightly as it stared at the ground full of heavenly resources. It seemed to drool as it stared at Jianchen and Kai Ya with its intelligent, bright little eyes. It was like it was begging them out of desire. This was the 7-colored heaven-devouring beast that had not been seen for quite a long while. It had always remained beside Kai Ya, hiding in Kai Ya's space ring to cultivate. "Oh, you little thing. You always come out when you see something good," Jianchen could not help but joke as he gently knocked its head with his knuckles. "Eat whatever you want," Kai Ya said gently as she looked at the 7-colored heaven-devouring beast tenderly. She could not forget about the help it had provided her with when she was still weak. The 7-colored heaven-devouring beast was immediately overjoyed. It fluttered its wings as if flew into the heap of heavenly resources as a blur and directly wolfed down 3 of them in one fell swoop. After that, it returned into Kai Ya's space ring in satisfaction. In the end, Jianchen, Kai Ya, and Qianlong split the 266 heavenly resources evenly, while Xiao Zheng took away a flower of ways. Originally, Jianchen wanted to give Xiao Zheng some more heavenly resources, but Xiao Zheng declined firmly. He knew that he did not contribute much to collecting the heavenly resources, so a single flower of ways satisfied him very much already. He did not wish to take advantage of them. Afterwards, Jianchen and Kai Ya did not stay for any longer. They directly left the Neptunian mountains, heading for the 8th floor of the Neptunian Divine Palace. At the same time, Ziyun carried Xiao Man as she fell out of the air while shaking, 10,000 kilometers from Jianchen's location. As soon as she hit the ground, she staggered and directly collapsed. Ziyun's face was sheet white right now, without a shred of blood at all. Her presence was frail, and she was extremely weak such that she seemed like she was taking her last breaths. "Sister, how are you? Are you all right? Please don't scare me." Xiao Man hugged Ziyun tightly as her small face was filled with worry and fear. Ziyun had burnt her essence blood several times to flee, so she had paid a huge price. Coupled with the fact that she fought against some god kings along the way, she was heavily injured. As a result, not only did she no longer possess the power to flee, but she could not even stand up now. "Xiaoman, sorry. It's your sister who doomed you. I shouldn't have been greedy for that chaotic prime's legacy. Otherwise, we wouldn't have ended up like this. I can't last much longer, and the God Kings are going to catch up very soon. I can't accompany you any further in the future. Xiao Man, run right now. Their target is me, not you." Ziyun stared at Xiao Man gloomily as a deep sense of apology and regret filled her eyes. She was powerless even when she spoke. Chapter 2067, The Neptunian Moon, 3. However, Ziyun then smiled wanly. She was filled with bitterness and despair. Where could Xiao Man run off to with her strength? She could die from even the slightest shockwave within the Neptunian Divine Palace. Moreover, this was the 9th floor. To leave, she had to pass through the world of volcanoes on the 8th floor. How would Xiao Man cross through such a dangerous place when she could not even fly? Master, mistress, disciple doesn't know what to do right now. Why did you have to get me to take Xiao Man into the Neptunian Divine Palace? If Xiao Man did not come to the Neptunian Divine Palace, nothing would have happened. However, I've taken Xiao Man onto a path of no return now, Ziyun thought as she recalled the orders from her master and mistress before they passed away. No. Sister Ziyun, don't say that. Nothing will happen to you. Nothing will ever happen to you. Xiaoman held Ziyun as she called out painfully. Haha, I knew you wouldn't be able to last much longer. You really are done for now. At this moment, a voice rang out from the distance. Several late god kings flew over with lightning speed as they stared at the collapsed Ziyun with excitement and eagerness. Hand over everything you obtained in the dwelling or die. A late god king said coldly. You bunch of bad people, I won't let you hurt Sister Ziyun. You didn't get the legacy because you didn't have the capacity. It's not Sister Ziyun's fault. Xiaoman stood before Ziyun with her arms wide open as she gritted her teeth. Tears pooled up in her eyes as she stared at the god kings who had pursued her sister relentlessly. Her eyes were filled with resentment. Little kiddo, this has nothing to do with you. Piss off and play somewhere else. A god king looked at Xiaoman like she was an ant and exposed his presence slightly. Immediately, it heavily injured Xiaoman, causing her to vomit blood as she was blown away. Xiaoman! Ziyun cried out. Ignoring her own frailness, she immediately flew over to catch Xiaoman. Xiaoman laid in Ziyun's arms with a pale face as she constantly vomited blood. Her face was filled with pain. She was just too weak. A single shred of a god king's presence posed a fatal threat to her. Ziyun's heart was torn to pieces when she saw Xiaoman's current state. She was filled with bitterness inside as she called to the god kings. Don't you just want the chaotic prime's legacy? I'll give it to you then, but don't harm Xiaoman, or I won't give you anything even if I die. It would naturally be for the best if you were willing to cooperate. However, the people behind are going to catch up very soon. We need to go somewhere else. Everyone, what do you think? A one-armed god king said before looking at the other god kings. He seemed like he was pleading to them, which clearly indicated that they were not together. At this moment, Xiaoman's blood had completely soaked through her clothes. The blood passed through her clothes and dampened the pendant she wore. When the blood came in contact with the pendant, a mysterious presence appeared from the pendant that all the people present failed to discover. In fact, even primordial realm experts would struggle to sense it. The presence was extremely weak, so weak that it only managed to expand across a 3-meter diameter. However, when the presence appeared, it caused the ground of the Neptunian divine palace that had remained peaceful for who knew how many years to rumble violently. The entire 9th floor shook like a terrifying earthquake was happening. What is happening? Such a violent tremble has never happened throughout the history of the Neptunian divine palace. Is it a battle between terrifying supreme god kings? Impossible. The Neptunian divine palace is an extremely impressive god artifact. Let alone god kings, even primordial realm experts won't be able to make it shake when they fight in here. At this moment, the expressions of all people on the 9th floor changed drastically. They stared at the surroundings with unease. If it were the outside world, a rumbling like this would be nothing special, but it was just far too abnormal for something like this to happen in the Neptunian divine palace. However, they did not know that this rumbling was not limited to the 9th floor. From the 1st floor to the 12th floor, all of them shook. There was nowhere that remained peaceful in the Neptunian divine palace aside from the Neptunian mountains. Afterwards, what shocked everyone who had entered the Neptunian divine palace was that the sun hanging high in the sky that had not changed for millions of years actually began to set at that moment. A rarely seen sunset in the Neptunian divine palace was created. However, this sunset only lasted for a few seconds before the sun completely disappeared from the horizon. The entire world sank into darkness, and at that moment, a huge moon began to rise slowly in the sky, shining with clear light that illuminated the world. It's the Neptunian moon. It's the Neptunian moon. Heavens, the Neptunian moon has actually appeared. What does this mean? The ancient records have said that the Neptunian moon has never appeared ever since the Taoist sect of Neptunian was destroyed. Yet it has appeared now. No one in the Neptunian divine palace was able to remain calm anymore. They all stared at the full moon as their faces were filled with shock. In an unknown place within the Neptunian divine palace, an ancient consciousness seemed to gradually awaken from its slumber. At the same time, it emitted a mental pulse, Master's B bloodline, it's Master's bloodline. Master's bloodline has awakened me. I've finally waited until Master's descendants have arrived, but I'm too weak. I'm going to fall asleep again very soon. Oh no, Master's descendant is in danger. I must use my will to control the laws to protect Master's descendant, the mental pulse stammered. It was extremely weak, and after that, it fell silent once again. At the same time, the Neptunian Divine Palace seemed to undergo some sort of change. Aside from Kaya and Chanlong in the Neptunian Mountains, no one else sensed it, including the supreme experts on the God King's throne. Many spaceships hovered outside the Neptunian Divine Palace in outer space. They varied in size and shape. These spaceships belonged to various organizations across several planes. They were waiting for their juniors who had entered the Neptunian Divine Palace, and the spaceships also offered them protection. However, at this moment, several figures appeared in the space closest to the Neptunian Divine Palace. All of them radiated with extremely terrifying presences, where the surrounding space distorted. Every single one of them was extremely powerful. However, all of their eyes currently shone as they stared at the Neptunian Divine Palace closely. They were all stern. After slumbering for over 3 million years, the artifact spirit of the Neptunian Divine Palace has finally awakened. Since the artifact spirit has awakened, the Neptunian Divine Palace will gain a new master. I must report this huge matter immediately. It looks like it'll be quite rowdy in the Neptunia Divine Palace soon. This time is very likely to be the last time the Neptunian Divine Palace will be opening. Only a select few people knew that the artifact spirit of the Neptunian Divine Palace had awakened. Even the astonishingly powerful Supreme God Kings in the structure failed to sense it at all. Outside, only a few people out of the spaceships from various planes and organistations sensed the awakening. They reported this matter back to their organizations as quickly as possible. The rumbling of the earth within the Neptunian Divine Palace gradually stopped. Very soon, it became peaceful once again as if nothing had happened at all. Only the sun that had hung in the sky for millions of years was gone, replaced by a huge moon. The interior of the Neptunian Divine Palace had lost all of its radiance, replaced by heavy darkness. Only the hazy light from the moon provided the dark space with some dim light. This change cast a shadow in the hearts of all the cultivators within the Neptunian Divine Palace. They all could not help but think about an ancient legend that had been around for who knew how long. When the sun vanishes and the moon rises once again, a drastic change will happen to the Neptunian Divine Palace. What kind of change would this be? Would it be positive or negative? No one could answer these questions right now, including the supreme prodigies from peak organizations. Kaya and Jianchen hovered in the air on the 9th floor of the Neptunian Divine Palace. Both of them raised their heads to stare at the moon high in the sky. They were stern. They could not help but think about the ancient legend Shaojing had told them about regarding the sun and moon of the Neptunian Divine Palace. Jianchen, did you sense that the world seems to have changed slightly? Kaya looked at Jianchen as she said with some uncertainty. Jianchen sensed his surroundings carefully before shaking his head gently. Aside from the change of the celestial body and the level of luminance, there's nothing else different from what I can tell. Kaya, have you discovered something? Kaya remained silent as she closed her eyes and carefully sensed her surroundings. When she opened her eyes, she showed surprise and doubt. At the same time, Chanlong emerged from the cave in the Neptunian mountains. He stared at the pitch-black sky and murmured, "The Neptunian moon has actually reappeared." According to Shaojing, something significant is about to happen to the Neptunian Divine Palace. When I was fused with the Grand Exalts formation earlier, I sensed a strange pulse as well as if something changed within the Neptunian Divine Palace in that instance earlier. It's as if the laws here are different from before, but it has no effect in the boundary of the Neptunian mountains. Several tens of million kilometers away from Jianchen, the group of God Kings led by the 5th Prince of the Sky Empire sat on the ground and meditated. Many of them were covered with blood, and some of them were pale, clearly injured. They were recovering through pills. Unsurprisingly, the 10 god kings of the Yun family were among them. After Yun Exen agreed to become the 5th prince's wife, they were bound to the 5th prince. Originally, the Yun family was satisfied with their harvest this time after Yun Exen ingested the spiritual root of heavenly ways, so the 10 remaining god kings all wanted to leave and escort Yun Exen away. However, the 5th prince wanted them to stay, so they could only stay. This was because their Yun family did not dare to offend the 5th prince of the Sky Empire at all. There was no need for them to fear this much if their Yun family was distant from the Sky Empire, but they just happened to be located in the Empire. Bai Qi and the others still haven't returned. They shouldn't have taken so long, the 5th prince said softly as he sat on the ground. However, he stared at the moon in the sky without blinking at all. He was stern. The reappearance of the Neptunian moon meant that something big was about to happen to the Neptunian divine palace. However, no matter what the change was, even the ancestral emperors of the Sky Empire had no idea, which made the 5th prince feel danger. He wanted to gather his own forces as soon as possible. This was because a few of the god kings he had originally brought in had died from all the battles in the past few days, making his forces weaken slightly. Please do not worry, Your Highness. We've already left where we were before, so it'll naturally take Bai Qi and the others some time for them to catch up. The Neptunian Divine Palace is not peaceful either. Bai Qi and the others have probably been delayed by some matter seeing how they still haven't returned. However, not many people can threaten the 2 siblings on the 9th floor anymore given their strength. There's no need to worry, Your Highness, Mr. Shu said calmly from beside the 5th prince. However, his eyes shone brightly as he stared at the horizon, at the moon in the sky. Mr. Shu seemed scholarly and harmless, but he was extremely powerful. The 5th prince glanced at Yun Exen, who was cultivating with her eyes closed nearby. He said slowly, I'm not worried about anything happening to Bai Qi and them. I'm concerned with whether they've completed my mission or not. Close to the 5th prince, a small, thin god king snickered and said to the 5th prince politely through a secret message, There's no need to worry at all, Your Highness. It'll be effortless for the siblings to kill Jian Qin and the others with their strength. Nothing will go wrong. The 4 of them should be dead already, and the siblings should return very soon. The 5th prince nodded slightly and said in a deep voice, Let's heal up as quickly as possible. Who knows what will happen next with the Neptunian moon's appearance? We have to face it at our peak condition. At this moment, a god king that the 5th prince had sent out to investigate certain matters returned. He said politely, Your Highness, a major matter has happened recently. Someone entered the divine medicinal garden with a formation-destroying treasure and cleaned out 1/4 of the whole place in a short amount of time. What? 1/4 of all the heavenly resources in the garden have been dug away? Is that true? The 5th prince's face changed, and he suddenly stood up. He knew about the divine medicinal garden. Only god-tier heavenly resources were planted there, and every single one of them was invaluable. However, powerful formations protected them all, so getting through the formations to harvest them was extremely difficult. Even with the current force he possessed, it would not be guaranteed that he would be able to harvest a single heavenly resource within the 10 years the Neptunian Divine Palace would remain open. As a result, he did not attempt to collect the heavenly resources there even though he had gone to the garden before and desired the god-tier heavenly resources dearly. There would never be more than 10 heavenly resources dug up each time the Neptunian Divine Palace was opened throughout history, yet he had just heard that someone had dug up 1/4 of everything there. It was just too shocking to accept. 1/4 of the divine medicinal garden. That's over 200 god-tier heavenly resources. Even the imperial vault of our Sky Empire does not necessarily have such a terrifying number of god-tier heavenly resources. Mr. Shu gasped in shock as well. The reporting god king's expression became rather strange. He continued, It's completely true. I've also heard that the people who took the heavenly resources away include Jian Chen's group. With that, the 5th prince's eyes narrowed, and his face immediately sank. He growled, When did this appear? It should have appeared today, the god king replied. Mr. Shu looked away and turned towards the reporting god kings. He was slightly stunned. Meanwhile, the fifth prince's face had completely sunken, where his gaze was extremely icy. He growled, Jian Chen and his group are actually still alive, and they've taken away a quarter of the entire divine medicinal garden. On the other hand, Bai Qi and the others still haven't returned. This has exceeded my expectations. Either Bai Qi and the others have failed, or they faced some other problems and were delayed, Mr. Shu said as his eyes deepened with thought. The fifth prince fell silent for a while before ordering in a deep voice, Everyone, stop healing. We're setting off immediately. This time, the fifth prince wanted to find Jian Chen with his own group of people. The heavenly resources on Jian Chen interested him greatly, such that he wanted to obtain them regardless of the price. The god kings of the Yun family and Yun Exen left with the fifth prince quietly. The fifth prince purposefully retained this information, so they did not hear the conversation and had no clue where the fifth prince was going to this time or what he was going to do. Kaya, let's go. No matter what happens in the Neptunian Divine Palace, we have to leave for the 8th floor as soon as possible, Jian Chen said to Kaya high in the air as he ignored the Neptunian moon. Do you want to go to the bottom of the lava on the 8th floor to collect fire divine crystals? Kaya stared at Jian Chen. That's right. A single fire divine crystal is worth 10 times as much as a piece of supreme quality divine crystal of the same size. We need large amounts of divine crystals to go to other planes or directly return to the cloud plane. Although we have a large amount of heavenly resources with us, exchanging them for divine crystals won't be easy, and it might even lead to some problems. Moreover, I'm not exactly willing to sell those heavenly resources, as we have so many old friends in the Tian Yuan clan who need them, Jian Chen said in thought. You've witnessed how terrifying the lava is. Even if you have the tower, it'll be very difficult for you to collect the fire divine crystals at the bottom of the lava. It's not like your body can endure the terrifying lava, Kaya said with some worry. She felt angst over the terrifying lava on the 8th floor, where even after she had become a god king and her strength had increased drastically, she still did not dare to touch it. If we don't try, how will we know? Jian Chen smiled indifferently. His confidence swelled after breaking through with the chaotic body. Even if his body was unable to last in the lava, the Nata Tower could protect him. At this moment, Jian Chen's eyes narrowed. Like a ray of light that pierced through the darkness, his gaze was locked onto something in the distance. He was surprised as he murmured, Why would it be them? Why have them come to the Neptunian Divine Palace as well? It's that little girl you met on the spatial battleship. She's so weak, so what is she doing here? Kaya stared into the distance as well and was greatly surprised. Let's go over and have a look, said Jian Chen before directly hurrying over with Kaya. A pale-faced Ziyun held Xiao Man tightly several dozen kilometers from Jian Chen's location. She powerlessly stared at the god kings around her with resentment. The sudden appearance of the Neptunian moon had startled the god kings. They all stared at the moon right now, so it was a perfect time for her to run or launch a sneak attack. However, Ziyun had lost that ability, as she was heavily injured, and her vitality was greatly drained. A while later, the god kings returned from the shock the appearance of the Neptunian moon gave them, and they stared at Ziyun once again. Something big is going to happen in the Neptunian Divine Palace. Let's get the legacy from her and leave. It doesn't matter whether this change is good or bad. I don't think we should take part in it. That's right. Take her to a remote region, and we'll leave immediately after getting what we want. 2 god kings said sternly. The appearance of the Neptunian moon caused them great unease, casting a shadow of uncertainty in their hearts. They felt fear for the unknown. Everyone, you're all mighty god kings, yet you won't even let a mortal realm girl go? Aren't you far too brutal? At this moment, a deep voice rang out and caused the expressions of the god kings to change as they were about to take Ziyun away. They had all become flustered by the appearance of the Neptunian moon, so they directed all their attention there, lowering their attention towards the surroundings completely. They actually failed to discover someone had approached the area. The god kings followed the voice and looked over. All they saw were 2 young people, 1 female and 1 male, flying over beside each other. They both seemed to be in their 20s. The man was handsome, and his face seemed resolute, giving off a heroic, warlike spirit. It was obvious that he had gone through a baptism of battles. The woman, on the other hand, was nowhere close to being alluring, but she was still pretty and possessed an otherworldly bearing. It's actually just two early god kings. But since they've already discovered us, we can't let them leave to stop the information from being leaked. Let's finish them off cleanly by sending some people later, the god kings sneered as they relaxed. They did nothing to stop the two, allowing the two to approach them. At the same time, they secretly discussed with one another and reached an agreement very soon. The two people were Jian Chen and Kaya, obviously. They ignored the god kings who showed different expressions as they directly flew over from afar calmly. They arrived right in front of Ziyun. Ziyun clearly recognized Jian Chen and Kaya as well. Jian Chen had assisted them on the spatial battleship from the Cloud Plane before, taking back Xiaoman's jade pendant from the three-eyed demon king. Ziyun had always felt grateful towards him for that. Ziyun raised her head and looked at Jian Chen and Kaya. She smiled weakly. Have you come for my chaotic prime's legacy as well? Jian Chen was surprised when he heard that, but he understood the situation very soon. He stared at Ziyun strangely and said, I heard that a chaotic prime's dwelling appeared near the divine medicinal garden a while ago, but I never thought you were the one who obtained it. Jian Chen's feelings were extremely mixed as he looked at Ziyun. He had no idea whether he should loathe her or not. It was exactly because Ziyun had gained the recognition of the legacy that many god kings returned to the divine medicinal garden, which revealed his entire operation in the garden. If Ziyun had obtained the legacy later, the god kings would have returned later as well, and he would have had enough time to clean out the entire place. Unfortunately, the rare opportunity was destroyed by Ziyun, which filled Jian Chen with much pity. So you have come for the legacy. Unfortunately, even if I give the legacy to you, you won't be able to leave with it. Ziyun was downcast as she glanced at the surrounding god kings. Chapter 2070, Taking a Saint Artifact. Who said we came for the legacy? Jian Chen's expression was strange as he stared at Ziyun with an odd smile. He said without caring too much, a chaotic prime's legacy is indeed enough for many god kings to go insane and shed blood over, but it's pretty much useless to me. Indeed. Jian Chen cultivated the chaotic body, and he had made quite impressive progress with it, so he could no longer switch to another cultivation method. As a result, even a grand prime's legacy would struggle to interest him, let alone a chaotic prime's legacy. Perhaps, a chaotic prime's legacy was not even as great as some 5-colored divine crystals to him now. When the god kings heard Jian Chen's words, the light in their eyes immediately flickered. Their gazes towards Jian Chen became surprised and doubtful as they tried to make certain connections to certain things. Various thoughts crossed their minds. An early god king was not even interested in a chaotic prime's legacy. What could that mean? It meant that he either possessed a great background or his cultivation method was so extraordinary that he could ignore a chaotic prime's legacy. Of course, it was possible that he was just lying. The god kings could not help but carefully study Jian Chen after they heard his words, but they sneered very soon. They believed that Jian Chen was just lying in front of them, trying to pose as a disciple from a large sect or organization so that he could strike fear into their hearts or even take away the legacy before them. However, all disciples of large sects or organizations would have many guards around them. Jian Chen and Kaya clearly did not possess that, so the god kings ruled out that possibility very soon. A sliver of surprise flashed through Ziyun's eyes as well as she looked at Jian Chen with some shock. However, she became gloomy once again and said to the god kings around her, I can give you my legacy. And I am willing to leave with you. I only have one condition, and that is for you to not touch a single hair on my younger sister. Afterwards, Ziyun looked at Jian Chen and basically pleaded, Savior, Ziyun, beg you to leave here with my younger sister. If I somehow manage to survive, I am willing to do anything for you. A person among the god kings snorted coldly after what Ziyun had said, We can leave your sister alone, but don't you think that those two can leave here with your sister because they won't have that opportunity anymore? With that, 4 god kings struck out at the same time. They swung out with their swords. And multicolored, resplendent sword chi shot towards Jian Chen and Kaya. They had already reached an agreement to not let Jian Chen and Kaya leave, or once they leaked this information, it would cause great trouble for them. They might even lose the Chaotic Prime's legacy as a result. Ziyun closed her eyes painfully in response to the attacks of the 4 God Kings. Originally, she saw a sliver of hope for Xiao Man to survive with Jian Chen's appearance, hoping that he could leave with her. After all, she did trust Jian Chen more than the God Kings before her. However, now that the 4 late God Kings all tried to kill Jian Chen and Kaya, Ziyun became filled with despair. She did not believe that 2 early God Kings could withstand the attacks of 4 late God Kings. Protect your sister. She won't be able to endure the shockwaves from battles between God Kings. At this moment, Jian Chen's voice rang out in Ziyun's head. It was calm and composed, completely unflustered. Jian Chen's calmness was clearly completely different from what Ziyun was imagining. She subconsciously opened her eyes and just happened to see something shocking. Her eyes widened dramatically. A golden strand of sword qi shot out from Jian Chen's hand, shining with resplendent light that illuminated the dark world golden. It collided with a strand of sword qi condensed from the power of the laws of fire, and with a great rumble, the golden sword qi shattered the sword qi composed of the laws of fire, reducing it into a fiery explosion in the air. The golden sword qi did not slow down at all, piercing through the darkness as a golden streak and punching through the body of a late God King before disappearing into the horizon. Arg! The God King who sent out the fire-red sword qi cried out miserably as he stared at Jian Chen in disbelief. His heart churned. Only when he truly faced the golden sword qi did he understand its terror. With his cultivation as a late God King, he was actually unable to endure it at all. He felt a fatal threat. This isn't the strength an early God King should possess, the God King cried out inside as he rapidly retreated. At the same time, Jian Chen punched out with chaotic force and dispersed the other strand of sword qi as well. Then he lunged forward, arriving before the other God King who had attacked him in a single step. Chaotic force filled his left hand as he gripped the Supreme Quality Saint Artifact sword tightly. The sharp edge was unable to cut through his hand. The God King was a young man in green clothes with an ordinary appearance. When he saw Jian Chen grab his sword without suffering injuries, his eyes immediately narrowed as he showed a sliver of shock. Immediately he wanted to draw back his hand, but he discovered that Jian Chen's hand was like a powerful clamp, locking the sword in place tightly. He could not break free. After looking for so long and seeing so many Supreme Quality Saint Artifact swords, I've finally found one that satisfies me somewhat. I'm taking your sword, Jian Chen said with some delight as he gripped the young man's Supreme Quality Saint Artifact. He used his right hand like a blade, and with a sudden swing he slashed it towards the young man's hand. The young man's face was shocked. And a high-quality Saint Artifact armor appeared, completely covering his right hand. At the same time, he swung his left hand with all the strength he could muster towards Jian Chen's chop in an attempt to stop him. Bang! With a heavy thud, the young man felt like Jian Chen's hand was as tough as a god artifact, where it was completely unstoppable. Not only did his left hand completely fail to stop Jian Chen, but his hand had even almost shattered from the force. Jian Chen's chop fell and landed on the young man's hand with unbelievable weight. The armor that protected his hand directly shattered from Jian Chen's strike and his entire hand was ripped off. The young man grunted in pain as he stared at his right arm that spurted with blood. He was utterly shocked inside. Was this person really an early God King? He had such a tough body and such impossible battle prowess. Jian Chen studied the Supreme Quality Saint Artifact in his hand and murmured, "Although it's not fantastic, I'll have to make do. I'll change it when I find one that's even more suitable." As he said that, Jian Chen poured his chaotic force into the sword and removed the imprint the young man had left in the sword effortlessly. The sword had already become bound to the young man's soul, so when the imprint was destroyed, the young man became heavily injured. He vomited blood before staring at Jian Chen in utter fear. Jian Chen's presence underwent an overwhelming change as he clutched the sword. An extremely sharp sword qi radiated from him, plunging right into the sky. It seemed to form an illusionary sword stabbed into the ground as if he was a god of the sword. The god kings in the surroundings who had not taken part yet all stared at Jian Chen, and their faces changed drastically. At that moment, they felt like Jian Chen was an ancient beast that had awakened from its slumber. He had become even more terrifying. Jian Chen hovered in the air with his sword as his hair fluttered without any wind. He stared coldly at the young man and said, "I'll spare you because of this sword." With that, Jian Chen's sword suddenly shone with a resplendent glow as bright as the sun as he swung the sword towards the other god king that had attacked him. Chapter 2071. Protected by the World. 1. The sword chi shone resplendently like a bolt of lightning at night, illuminating the entire sky. It shot out with the violence of chaotic force and the sharpness of the laws of the sword, arriving before the late god king in a single instance. It was fast, simply too fast. The sword chi from Jian Chen's supreme quality saint artifact was so powerful that it was far beyond the level of early god king. In fact, it was enough to threaten the lives of late god kings. The eyes of the late god king that this attack targeted narrowed. He became extremely grim at that moment. Not only was the sword chi astonishingly fast, but it had also locked onto his presence as well, making it impossible for him to dodge. He could only take it on forcefully. At that critical moment, the god king suddenly bellowed out, and the power of the laws of fire condensed. Flames surged around him as he became surrounded by a flaming ring, which then turned into a huge fire dragon that soared in the air, giving off great power as it struck out. Immediately, the sky was dyed red. It mingled with the white light from Jian Chen's sword chi, dyeing the surroundings with bright colors. The temperature in the surroundings rapidly rose as the sand and stone on the ground melted into lava. Boom! The fire dragon and the sword chi collided, producing a deafening sound. Both of the attacks dispersed in the air, and Jian Chen's sword chi was directly engulfed by fire. If it were a battle of only laws, Jian Chen would naturally be on the losing side. After all, he had only reached the major achievement of sword spirit recently, which was equivalent to early god king. Even if the laws of the sword was known as a law that possessed the greatest offensive power, it was still unable to make up for the difference and match the laws of fire from a late god king. However, his sword chi did not only contain the power of the laws of the sword. There was chaotic force as well. After the sword chi collapsed, the chaotic force within it continued onwards like an arrow. It did not slow down at all. It directly passed through the sky of fire and pierced through the forehead of the late god king as a black streak of light with lightning speed, wiping out his soul. All the other god kings gathered in the surroundings became extremely shocked when they witnessed this. Afterwards, their gazes towards Jian Chen underwent an overwhelming change. At that moment, no one dared to underestimate Jian Chen anymore after he displayed his astonishing strength. Many people looked at him in deep angst, and they even showed some fear. An early god king had actually slain a late god king so easily. Everyone was both surprised by and feared this battle prowess. Killing a late god king was already something commonplace to Jian Chen. He did not even glance at the dead god king again. Instead, he looked at the sword in his hand. Although it was not perfect, it was enough for him for now. My strength has indeed increased significantly with a supreme quality saint artifact. It'll be even easier for me to deal with those regular late god kings, Jian Chen murmured in some delight. Although he had killed late god kings before, only he knew that killing them was definitely not as easy as right now. The anger of the young man who had lost both his right hand and supreme quality saint artifact to Jian Chen completely fizzled out. He did not dare to show any of his anger at all. Forcefully enduring the pain from his arm, he said in fear, "Since you, sir, has taken a favor for the sword, then it'll be yours." The young man also felt quite fortunate inside. He knew that if it were not for the fact that Jian Chen took a liking towards his supreme quality saint artifact, he probably would have ended up the same as the other person. On the other side, Kai Ya's battle ended very quickly as well. She had also fought mercilessly, striking out decisively and viciously. Neither of the two late god kings who attacked her was alive anymore, having both been slain. Kaya did not possess a powerful energy or body like Jian Chen, but her usage of laws had reached a level of perfection already. It was the same laws, yet in her hands, they were able to demonstrate extremely shocking might. Just that alone made her strength equal to Jian Chen's. In the blink of an eye, 3 of the 4 god kings had died. The supreme strength Kaiya and Jian Chen had displayed prevented the surrounding god kings from acting recklessly. However, they did not leave either, remaining where they were uneasily. Heavily injured and extremely weak, Ziyun's eyes were wide open as she watched on in disbelief. Her shock had already peaked. Let's kill all these people. They all wanted to kill us. At this moment, Kaiya appeared before Jian Chen. She looked around coldly and emotionlessly said these words as she gave off a faint, cold presence. There was a sense of pride that could not be offended within the coldness as well. Jian Chen looked at Kaiya deeply as a sliver of worry flashed through his eyes. After Kaiya had become a god king, she had changed just too drastically. He struggled to see the Kaiya from the Tianyuan continent on her anymore. Although they wanted to kill us, they did not move against us in the end. Kaiya, it's better if we don't kill them all, Jian Chen said to Kaiya. Just when he wanted to persuade them to leave, his face suddenly changed slightly, and he looked into the distance. He became stern. There are a lot of god kings heading our way. We can't stay here. Kaiya, take Ziyun, and I'll take Xiaoman. Let's leave here as soon as possible. Kaiya did not move. She looked at Jian Chen and asked, they're total strangers. Why do you want to save them? Jian Chen was surprised and said, that's not important right now. Let's talk after we take them to safety. In a world where the strong prey on the weak, only those who are suitable will survive. The situation therein happens constantly throughout the world. There must be a reason why you're saving them, Kaiya said seriously. She stood there with no intention of saving them. Back on the spatial battleship, I saw Xiaoling's shadow on Xiaoman. Is that enough of a reason? Jian Chen responded. Kaiya nodded slightly and did not keep speaking. She turned around and arrived beside Ziyun, picking her up and leaving. Suddenly, she became startled when she saw Xiaoman. Then she looked at the world around her. She seemed confused. This was because she felt a strange feeling that Xiaoman seemed to be connected with the world of the Neptunian Divine Palace at that moment. Jian Chen arrived before Xiaoman with a flash. Just when he reached for Xiaoman, he was suddenly plunged into utter darkness. Not only was he unable to see through it with his vision as a god king, but even the senses of his soul was affected. Laws of darkness. Jian Chen's eyes turned cold. He knew that the god kings around would not let him leave so easily. At the same time, an intense feeling of danger sprang up in Jian Chen's heart. He experienced an intense piercing pain on his forehead. A 3-inch long black spike was hidden in the darkness. It had basically become a part of the space there, stabbing towards Jian Chen's forehead with lightning speed. Chapter 2072, Protected by the World. 2. Sensing the piercing pain on his forehead silently, a cold light flashed through Jian Chen's eyes. The person who had launched a sneak attack against him in the darkness clearly wanted to kill him in a single stroke. The person who attacked him was powerful. He was a late god king, and he was shrouded by the laws of darkness, which affected both sight and the senses of the soul, preventing them from really being useful. If a regular god king had to face this sneak attack, they might truly end up dead from a single attack. Unfortunately, his opponent was Jian Chen. At that critical moment, Jian Chen's newly obtained Supreme Quality Saint artifact stabbed out as a blur. Swish! Jian Chen's strike was extraordinarily fast, truly reaching the speed of lightning. With a dazzling flash, it bore the mysteries of the way of the sword as it directly fused with the darkness. It collided with the silent, viper-like spike. He had struck out purely from his senses, but the tip of the sword collided accurately with the tip of the black spike. With a clear metallic screech, an energy shockwave containing the laws of darkness and sword chi condensed from chaotic force erupted, causing the surrounding darkness to shake violently. However, after the strike, the black spike suddenly vanished completely, without leaving behind any presence or pulse. In the pure darkness where the senses of the soul was affected, Even Jianchen was unable to find the location of the person. Jianchen frowned. He stood there straight with his sword in his hand, giving off a feeling where he was as still as a mountain and could not be moved. He knew he had encountered a powerful assassin. This space enveloped by the laws of darkness was equivalent to a domain of his opponent. The assassin could move through it like a fish in water and had absolute control over it. As for Jianchen, it was like he was in mud, where he was forced to respond to everything and could not attack first. If the assassin hidden in the darkness did nothing, he would not be able to sense where he was. Jianchen snorted coldly. Golden light flickered on him as a strand of Daluo sword qi condensed in a single instance. It directly shot towards the darkness with dazzling golden light. Wherever the sword qi passed by, the darkness opened up, but in the next moment, the laws of darkness filled it up once again. However, just when Jianchen struck out, the black spike appeared once again. It was silent just like before, approaching Jianchen's head from behind with lightning speed. Jianchen suddenly turned around. Even though he was unable to see or use the senses of his soul, his terrifying instincts for battle and all the experience he had accumulated along the way still allowed him to capture the trajectory of the spike with extreme accuracy. His hand opened and suddenly shot out while coated with a layer of chaotic force. He grabbed towards the black spike. The black spike was extremely sharp, easily piercing through Jianchen's chaotic body. The wound was bone deep and drew blood. However, Jianchen ignored his hand. Cultivating the chaotic body had gifted him with an extremely powerful body. A small injury like this was basically nothing. The moment he grabbed the black spike, he had already stabbed out with the sword in his right hand. Jianchen grabbed the spike with one hand and struck out with the other, completing the move at basically the same time, without giving his opponent any time to react. Spurt! With that sound and a slight resistance from the sword, Jianchen knew he had injured his opponent. Even though the opponent was only inches away, Jianchen was still unable to sense the person launching the sneak attacks. With a grunt, the assassin in the darkness was injured. He no longer wanted to fight, retreating decisively after drawing back the black spike from Jianchen. He disappeared instantly, leaving behind no traces. Immediately, the laws of darkness that engulfed the space vanished. Jianchen looked around and failed to find traces of the assassin. He had even failed to see the assassin's face. There was only blood on his sword. However, with that delay, the god kings behind them had caught up already. Over 100 of them charged towards Jianchen and Kaya with lightning speed, surrounding them as burning desire filled their eyes. Their primary target was Ziyun, but now that Ziyun and Kaya were together, Jianchen and Kaya naturally became the targets of some people as well. "Let's go!" Jianchen called out. Although he failed to sense any particularly powerful presences among these people, Xiao Man was with him, which restricted what he could do. He did not dare to engage in an intense battle with him. However, just when Jianchen reached towards Xiao Man and touched her, he felt a mysterious power that was invisible to both the naked eye and the senses of the soul. The mysterious power completely enveloped Xiao Man. Not only was Jianchen unable to touch her, but he also could not help but have his heart sink heavily when he came in contact with the mysterious power. The mysterious power seemed boundless and unimaginably powerful in his eyes. It was completely indestructible, which induced fear within him. Jianchen's eyes narrowed. He stared closely at the pale Xiao Man who laid on the ground, and his face changed constantly. Kaya had always been quietly observing Xiao Man from one side. The light in her eyes flickered as well when she saw this. She said, "This girl is protected by this world. As long as she's in the Neptunian Divine Palace, she's protected by the world. Unless there is a power that surpasses the Neptunian Divine Palace, probably no one can harm her." Jianchen was surprised by that. He said, "How is this possible? If she really is protected by the world, how did she become injured?" Ziyun became filled with disbelief as well when she heard Kaya's words. However, she felt even more confusion and doubt, clearing experiencing the same doubts as Jianchen. Kaya fell silent in thought before looking at Ziyun. "If I've guessed correctly, this girl was injured before the Neptunian moon had appeared, right?" When the Neptunian moon appeared, I could vaguely sense that the laws in the Neptunian divine palace seemed to change. Afterwards, when I saw this girl, I could vaguely sense that a certain power seemed to revolve around her. This power resonates with the Neptunian divine hall as if it is the Neptunian divine hall's power. Kaya looked at Xiaoman deeply and continued, with the protection of such a great power, no one can harm her in the Neptunian divine palace. However, she's actually injured now. That means that this power appeared after she was injured. Kaya fell silent temporarily there before continuing again. If I've guessed correctly, the appearance of the Neptunian moon is related to this girl. Ziyun was completely stunned when she heard that. Disbelief filled her face. The appearance of the Neptunian moon was related to Xiaoman? She struggled to imagine why the terrifying Neptunian divine palace would undergo a drastic change because of Xiaoman. Just what secret was Xiaoman hiding? It was not just her. Even Jianchen found it to be very unbelievable. He was completely stunned as well. Lady, you're not a person who can obtain the legacy of a chaotic prime. Hand over the legacy and you can go, or you'll learn of the consequences later. At this moment, a person called out. Jianchen, Kaya, and so on had already become surrounded by many god kings. The god kings who had pursued Ziyun at first and were shaken off after she burned her essence blood had finally all caught up. There were 50 to 60 god king, and every single one of them radiated with powerful presences as they stood in the surroundings. They encircled them, trapping them inside. Moreover, as these people pursued, they rapidly called for their friends, clansmen, seniors, or juniors who were in the Neptunian divine palace as well, gathering their strength such that they were more and more god kings gathering from all directions. The god kings who surrounded them rapidly increased, forming an unbreachable encirclement around them, trapping Jianchen and Kaya with Ziyun and so on inside. They all stared at Ziyun. Even though some of them originated from large organizations, they were still unable to resist the enticement of a chaotic prime's legacy. However, none of them dared to attack first. They maintained a certain distance from one another. As they stared at Ziyun, they were also cautious of the people around them. Jianchen slowly looked around and frowned. An assassin with the laws of darkness had attacked them before, which wasted time. Afterwards, due to what happened with Xiaoman, they wasted some more time, causing them to lose their perfect opportunity to escape, and they fell into an encirclement. Jianchen looked at Xiaoman as he felt secretly troubled. With his and Kaya's strength, he was confident that they could kill their way out of the encirclement as long as supreme experts of the God King's throne did not appear. However, he was unable to approach Xiaoman at all due to the protection from the mysterious power, so it was naturally impossible for him to take her with him. He could not just abandon Xiaoman there all by herself while he and Kaya killed their way out with Ziyun, right? At this moment, another few god kings flew over from the distance and joined the encirclement. However, when they saw Jianchen, they immediately became overjoyed. Jianchen, I never thought you'd be here. We've looked so hard for you. The surrounding god kings were all surprised when they heard the name, but they became overjoyed as well soon after. What? He's Jianchen? The guy who's rumored to have taken a large amount of god-tier heavenly resources from the divine medicinal garden? He's actually Jianchen? Looks like luck triumphs hard work. We've actually found him so easily. It said that Jianchen and a group of people dug up a quarter of all the heavenly resources in the divine medicinal garden. There are over 1,000 heavenly resources in there, so a quarter of that is over 200, although only a select few of the surrounding god kings had seen the image projected from the past. The fact that a quarter of the entire divine medicinal garden had been emptied spread throughout the entire 9th floor like wildfire. It reached the ears of everyone in a short amount of time, so everyone gained a deep impression of the name Jianchen. The only exception would be those people in secluded cultivation. Immediately, everyone shifted their gazes from Ziyun to Jianchen. They all showed greedy expressions without putting any effort to hide it. They all seemed like they were looking at a huge piece of treasure. Some people treated Jianchen with even more importance than Ziyun. Indeed, a chaotic prime's legacy interested them all, but there was only one of it after all. No one was confident about obtaining it. However, the god-tier heavenly resources on Jianchen was different. Even with so many of them, it was enough for them to all get a share of it. Everyone be careful. Jianchen is very powerful, and he cannot be underestimated. When he was an overgod, he killed many god kings in the divine medicinal garden, and even Mo Cheng, who ranked first on the overgod's plaque, lost to him. He's very hard to deal with. Now that his strength has broken through again, and he has become a god king, his battle prowess must be even greater. God kings called out in the group as their eyes were filled with angst. They had personally taken part in that battle, so they understood Jianchen's strength extremely well. Everyone, Jianchen is indeed very powerful. Although he's only an early god king, his battle prowess is extremely impressive. Look at my arm. My arm was cut off by Jianchen, and even the supreme quality saint artifact in his hand was taken from me. What is hilarious is that although I'm a late god king, I'm not his opponent at all. The lady beside Jianchen is very powerful as well. You must all be careful. Don't let them escape out of carelessness, the young man who had his arm chopped off by Jianchen called out. He looked at Jianchen with intense hatred. Previously, for the sake of surviving, he could not help but be submissive before Jianchen, and it was to the point where he did not dare to show any resentment at all. However, now that Jianchen was in trouble, he naturally could not continue to keep it all inside. He wanted revenge for his arm. With these warnings, the surrounding god kings all became cautious. Don't worry. Jianchen can't escape today. Everything he has gained from the divine medicinal garden will be handed over. After several dozen god kings surrounded Jianchen, along with the number of them rapidly increasing, many people believed that Jianchen was done for now. However, as the person involved in all of this, Jianchen ignored the surrounding situation completely. He looked at Ziyun with a slight frown and said, "Try to see if you can approach your sister." Jianchen, you're still worrying about other people at a time like this. You better worry about how you're going to survive, the young man with a severed arm sneered at the back of the encirclement. He stared at the supreme quality saint artifact in Jianchen's hands venomously. Jianchen said nothing. He stared at Ziyun, who had already arrived beside Xiaoman. She directly extended her hands to lift Xiaoman up, but the mysterious power around Xiaoman blocked her as well, preventing her from getting any closer. That girl is a little strange. In the surroundings, many god kings noticed Xiaoman as strange light flickered through their eyes. There seems to be a mysterious power around the girl. Let me try, a brown-robed old man said. He did not take a step forwards. Instead, he remained 100 meters away and controlled his sword with his soul, sending it towards Xiaoman's swish. The sword moved extremely quickly, crossing the 100 meters in a split second. It shone resplendently in the night as it shot towards Xiaoman. It possessed surprising power. The old man did not care about Xiaoman's life at all, nor did he consider the fact that Xiaoman was only at the mortal realm. He unleashed his great strength as a god king right from the start, holding nothing back. Chapter 2074. The Fifth Prince's killing intent. A cold light flashed through Jianchen's eyes. Even though he knew a mysterious power protected Xiaoman, preventing anyone from touching her, how could he allow a god king to attack her? Just when the old man's flying sword was about to reach Xiaoman, Jianchen struck out with his sword. The old man had been expecting Jianchen to do this. He could not help but smile scornfully. With a thought, the sword suddenly exploded in speed. However, Jianchen's strike was unbelievably fast as well. Even though the old man's flying sword had doubled in speed, it was still unable to dodge Jianchen's attack. Ding! Jianchen's sword struck the old man's flying sword with a force that was enough to shock the latter. With the clashing of metal, resplendent sparks were produced while the old man's sword was knocked far away with a deep thrum. Jianchen really is powerful. This is definitely not power an early god king can possess. The old man's face changed slightly. His mind was connected to his sword, so only he knew that while his sword seemed fine on the surface, it had already cracked inside. Jian Chen's strike had damaged his flying sword and almost managed to disperse the senses of his soul he had left in there to control it. I cannot fight him. The old man immediately made up his mind and retreated rapidly. He pulled far away from Jian Chen and also stood in a way where he indicated he would not be attacking anymore. However, Jian Chen did not let him go. With a single movement, he shot towards the old man as a blur. The sword in his hand shone with cold light as he stabbed towards the old man's forehead with a bright glow. Jian Chen's strike was merciless as well. It seemed to surpass the speed of lightning, reaching an unbelievable level where many of the God Kings present struggled to capture it with the sense of their souls. Clearly, Jian Chen wanted to kill the old man in a single strike. Sensing the power in Jian Chen's strike, the old man's face changed drastically. A set of high-quality Saint artifact armor appeared, covering his body completely, only leaving his two eyes revealed. Bang! Jian Chen stabbed the old man's forehead right after he equipped his armor, erupting with a heavy sound. Even though the old man was protected by his armor, he was still blown away by the force in Jian Chen's strike. His vertebrae all shattered while his head was almost blown off his body. Jian Chen, I already indicated that I would not be attacking again. Don't go overboard. Everyone, let's deal with him together. We can't let him break out, the old man said from his soul as he was absolutely terrified. A crack had already appeared on the forehead of his helm. He completely believed that Jian Chen's next strike would have been able to destroy his armor. The surrounding God Kings watched on coldly. None of them showed any intentions of stepping forwards. Among them, many of the God Kings who had arrived later had only heard that Jian Chen was very powerful from other people. However, they had no idea just how strong he was, so they wanted to test his strength out through the old man. At this moment, Jian Chen stabbed out a second time. His sword shone resplendently as he stabbed it out as a streak of light, dyeing the night sky snow-white. It was shocking. Jian Chen directly shattered the old man's armor with the second strike while the sharp tip churned with silver-white light. It penetrated the old man's forehead mercilessly, wiping out his soul. The sword the old man controlled that was currently flying back lost all power and fell to the ground with the old man's death. Jian Chen's face did not change at all. He collected the old man's space ring before returning to Xiao Man's side. Right now, he surged with sword intent, just like a god of the sword. He seemed like he was going to hold them all off by himself as he said frigidly, "Is there anyone else who would like to try?" It was completely silent. Many God Kings were indeed stunned by the great strength Jian Chen had displayed. He had completely overwhelmed and claimed the life of a late God King after two simple-looking attacks without using any battle skills. This strength deterred them from doing anything reckless. He was already so terrifying without using battle skills. If he used one, just how powerful would it be? With a supreme quality Saint artifact in his hand, Jian Chen's strength had indeed increased drastically. How imposing. You managed to stun all these God Kings all by yourself. You've earned my attention. At this moment, a peal of rather cold laughter rang out. A young man in violet armor strode over from the distance. He seemed like he was in his 20s. The young man's appearance was striking, and his gait was majestic. He gave off an undeniable sense of prestige, where it was possible to tell that it was nurtured from holding an important position for a long time. However, ever since he appeared, his eyes had remained locked on Jian Chen. His seemingly indifferent gaze hid a certain sharpness as well as faint killing intent. Jian Chen looked at the young man and recognized him as the fifth prince from the Sky Empire of the profound Thunder Plain with a single glance. The several dozen God Kings beside him included the God Kings of the Yun family. Yun Exan was also beside the fifth prince. When Yun Exan saw Jian Chen, she immediately showed excitement in her eyes. At the same time, she sighed in relief secretly. Just when she was about to call out to Jian Chen, she glanced at the fifth prince beside her. He seemed to be concerned, so she could only force it all back down inside her. Yun Lianqing's eyes lit up as well. He looked at Jian Chen amiably, and just when he was about to greet Jian Chen, a gleam of light flashed through his eyes. He glanced at the fifth prince before him and told Jian Chen in an extremely discreet fashion to be careful of the fifth prince. Yun Lianqing had known that the fifth prince wanted to kill Jian Chen since a very long ago, but due to the fact that their Yun family was located in the Sky Empire, their Yun family did not dare to act rashly. Even though he knew the fifth prince wanted Jian Chen dead, there was nothing he could do. So it's the fifth prince of the Sky Empire from the profound Thunder Plain. And I was thinking I would go find your highness after the matter here concluded, but never did I think I'd come across the fifth prince right now. The world sure is small. Jian Chen clasped his fist at the fifth prince as he smiled with hidden meaning. A gleam of light flickered through the eyes of the fifth prince when he heard that. He stared straight at Jian Chen and asked, "Why are you looking for me?" "You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.